I'd like to call to order our school committee meeting. I can't believe I'm going to say it's already November, so it's November 3rd, 2014. It is 7 p.m. I'd like to remind everyone that our meeting is being both audio and videotaped, and if anyone else in the audience is doing so, just please raise their hand and let us know. Okay, we don't have anyone. And right now, if we can all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, we're going to have our roll call, starting on my left.
Elizabeth Marcy Boucher.
Gregory Thompson.
Rich Fitzgerald.
Deirdre Mayu.
Gordon Smith, Superintendent of Schools.
Bill Fonseca.
Terry Olters, Assistant Superintendent of Business. Kathy Saletti, Recording Secretary.
Jack Monahan, Student Representative.
Great, thank you. All right, moving on, we have the approval of minutes. We have the October 20th, 2014 regular session meeting minutes. If I can get a motion, please.
Motion to approve the October 20th, 2014 regular session meeting minutes.
Motion made and seconded by Beth. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. And that carries forward 5-0. All right, we have committee and subcommittee communications, and I'll start with Beth.
Okay. On Friday, the ELHS is going to be having a movie night at Birchland, so look in your Facebook emails and in your backpacks for information on that. And also, the high school did a fabulous job throughout the accreditation process. I know it was years of work and 4 so very, very trying days. And I'm going to sum up in 2 sentences what the chair had to say. He began with that our students are noteworthy and unbelievable. And he ended with, you are getting great bang for your buck, but you have to spend more bucks. And I thought that was pretty much said it all, that they were very happy with what they saw, and it was good to hear, but we need to keep investing in our students.
Thank you.
Yep.
I just have an update on our Unit A negotiations. We did start, we met with Unit A last week. It's a good sized group, 6 members actually came representing Unit A. Good first discussion. We're scheduled again next 2 meetings in the next month or so keep plugging away with that.
At the collaborative meeting, two items came up. First was the development of school calendar for next year, so that may be coming to us in the next month. And secondly, which was extremely positive, and I'm glad the leadership team is here to hear this. The collaborative committee, each building has a representative there, and overwhelmingly, they said that the professional development was extremely inspiring and extremely motivating. They said the keys were that, one, they loved the process where we trained the trainers, and then those trainers trained. They loved the fact that staff did the presentations, and they loved that administrators also did presentations and workshops. It's been a long time since I've heard the whole system enjoy Professional Development Day that much. So congratulations to the leadership team for that wonderful Professional Development Day.
More of it tomorrow.
That's
right.
That's right. All right.
Same format.
Last Friday, College Fair, great job by the guidance department for putting this together. There were over 100 schools, as well as several branches of the military represented. And walking around with Gordon, kids seemed engaged, and they were asking all the right questions. So, very good job, and kudos to everybody involved.
Great. Jack, it's your turn.
Besides, NHS is going to be November 13th at 6:30. That's like the induction ceremony for this year. And then sports-wise, we have girls' soccer game that's going on right now. They're in the tournament. They're winning 4-0 as we speak, which is good. And then football also has a playoff game this Friday. So other than that, that's...
And are you getting updates as you sit here?
Exactly, yeah, I have an earpiece. So.
Speak to your sport. When is what's the Mass Cross Country?
So Western Mass Cross Country is this Saturday. That's at Northfield Mountain. And then we have the All-State Championships the following week. So.
How are we doing PVIC? I couldn't follow it in the paper.
Yeah, so PVIC was this weekend. It was this Saturday. It was a rainy, muddy,
cold.
dirty, cold,
Yeah.
Cold day for a meet. So everybody did pretty well for our team. Everybody did well. So.
Just for equity, Jack, volleyball is also in the playoffs, so.
True. Volleyball also. There you go.
All right, and I just want to add 2 more things. We did have a Health Advisory Council meeting. It was our first one for the year. And some of the things that we've discussed is doing like a wellness and fitness night at Maple Shade and hopefully at Birchland also, to try to get some fun evening activities for the students in those schools. And then I also had a chance to visit the Writers' Workshop over at the library. And if you haven't had a chance to go and do that, you have to go see it. It's great. So the Meadowbrook School was able to collaborate with the library where students were able to show their work. And it really was amazing. They even had like books.
Yeah.
It's like printed books that looked really nice, and get to see the kids' illustrations and words and stories. I had a great
I
story.
was concerned about one of them, I'm mistaken. The title was "The Day Everybody Cried."
That's the one I was going to mention. Is that Mrs. Hasbro? Was it Mrs. Hasbro? That was a great story, and I was going to mention that was the great story.
That was great.
Swimming around in the cheers.
Don't ruin it. Make everyone go in and read it.
It's called Meet the Writers.
Meet the writers.
That was good. I like
So
that.
again, I really highly recommend everyone going out and taking a visit. And I love that you can leave comments
Yeah.
about it. So, okay. So we are done with that
Yeah,
part.
great.
We're moving on to the next part, which is the opportunity for visitors to address the committee. So if anyone is here today in my audience that would like to come up and make a statement, this would be the time that you would do it. Okay, and seeing none, we can move on to the exciting part of tonight's evening, which is our presentation of District SMART Goals.
Okay. Well, we have our entire leadership team here, represented with not only their individual buildings, but they also are all armed and dangerous with their new laptops. So we'll see how this presentation goes now with the televisions and how the transition goes as each new presenter picks up and has to pump in a code. So what we'll do is give you an overview of the district SMART goals, and they're on all 3 TVs, and then each school will give you an idea of how, from the district, they connect to the district SMART goals and build their building goals. So, just quickly, a quick reminder of what SMART goals are. This is slide 2. There we go. And these, it's an acronym, obviously, so it's specific. The goals need to be specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, meaning that it's something that's in the work you're doing and it's going to help move student achievement along, and timely. And we always have at the bottom there, I think it should come up if you hit it one more time, that we want to make sure we're looking at all of our students, that our goals are reflective of moving all our students forward. So as we begin each year to develop these, we start with our mission, and our mission, simply put, is that we're looking throughout the district to promote not only achievement, but also the sense of accountability. And we're looking that as we do this throughout the grades, that we're educating our students today to be able to take on the challenges of tomorrow. And that leads us to our district theory of action, which is sort of the centerpiece that helps us launch into the goals, that we feel if we strengthen core instruction within a safe, nurturing, and respectful learning environment and develop collaborative leadership across the school district, then we will prepare our students who possess strong 21st century, we will prepare students, who possess 21st century learning skills. Our students will leave ELPS with strong communication skills, the ability to work collaboratively, think critically, and problem solve. And that actually was another piece that I think the NEAC chair pointed out in his final comments to staff, was our courses have rigor. Our setup at the high school is such that students are building off each other in problem solving, and they are doing it in a collaborative fashion. So that was nice to hear. As we begin the process of developing goals, we go through a pretty rigorous needs assessment, which I think Ms. Neer is going to walk us through.
So the needs assessment is just the process we use to identify what we want to concentrate our improvement efforts on, and some of the information that we take into consideration is found on this slide. So we take a look at all of our data, our interim data, both from internal assessments plus the MCAS. We have conversations collaboratively with the leadership team, the superintendent has conversations with the school committee, and we also get input from the school staff at in various ways. Part of our needs assessment keeps in mind that we continually need to work on our revision and alignment of our curriculum to the new state standards. We also receive feedback from staff and academic coaches around professional development needs. And then the overarching goal is to align our instructional practices to reach that 21st century learning which is described in the theory of action. And we don't want to lose the fact that we should continue to work on the successes that we've had, and also goals, if they're meaty enough and worth obtaining, need to be on the docket for years before you really, see that you've achieved those and move on. So we want to stay focused on the work.
Okay, and one of the charts that we brought back from our MCAS presentation was our district targets, which is on the screen now in white and blue. And basically what this is giving you, it gives you an idea, especially as we're going through our data, gives you an idea of what we actually achieved, the Composite Performance Index, that's the CPI 2014, what our target is for next year, and then further out, because when these targets were originally set back in 2011 was the base year, they looked out to 2017, and the idea was we needed to half the distance within that time. So you can see on one of the screens that you may be looking at, one of the three, that ELA, we continue to score very well across the district. We're closing in on that goal in 2017 of 95.7. Math, we're not scoring as well as we are in ELA, and as we start to break that down, you'll see various pieces of that through the cohorts. And so that was one of Mr. Ficero's questions, I believe, around that target does continue to go up towards the 2017 target. Science, we saw some significant gains as we looked at the results this year, and you can see where our CPI is at 85.9, where we now are set for 2015 and where we need to be for 2017. And then also the state breaks out high needs as a group, which actually is a combined group of low income and special education students. And so it gives you CPI targets for those students as well. All of that goes into your accountability, some of which we discussed at the last presentation. This was a chart that we had used in years past when we did the MCAS presentation, and it gives you an idea of just throughout the district, how are we doing, in this case, since 2009 through 2014. If you look at it and you go on the diagonal, that's a cohort or the same group of students moving through our district. This is ELA, and you see, if you look at the cohort, you see some pretty significant, on the diagonal, some pretty significant gains, say from 7th to 8th, where you see 77 to 86. And you see a really significant gain going to 8th through 10th. Remember, 9th grade doesn't take ELA, where you see going from 88 to 98%. So we're still seeing, as students go through the grades, that they're achieving at the highest levels at the high school. But we are seeing significant gains by cohorts at different grade levels.
Well, this is very powerful, because if you start at 2009 grade 4 or 2009 grade 5 and go diagonal, as you said, Mr. Smith, with exceptions, you see improvement every single grade. So this is very powerful. This is a very positive reflection of the work in ELA.
Right. ELA still is where we're scoring the highest.
But then in grade 4, we have that dip historically, right? It seems
Historically,
We've
right.
talked about that before, though, I think.
Right. And I think that's something that's also seen at the state level. It's from grade 3 to grade 4, you have a different test, but it's something that we're certainly starting to focus in on. And that's where we do some of the work that we talked about the last time, where we're looking at, are there specific standards over time that we consistently do or are challenged by? And I'm sure as we go through, different principals will be able to speak to that.
Now, my other question though is, what's the significance of looking at, like, let's say grade 3, I'm looking at year 2013 and 2014. These are two different classes, it's two different
Right.
third grade classes, and it would be a different test. How come I see such a difference in number, like a 71 and a 58? Was the test that much harder, or are these students having a more difficult time with it?
Well, it could be a combination of things. The test actually was starting to, MCAS, we talked about this previously, was starting to align more to the Common Core standards, and obviously Park will even do that more so. But as you look vertically, you're looking more at curriculum and curriculum implementation than you are looking at the same group of students, because you have different students as you go vertically in
Right.
any grade level.
So I'd be curious then what next year's
Grade
numbers
five.
might be. for
Right.
the-
Right.
Grade 4.
But then grade 3 is also that year where they're first taking
It's their first shot at the
the
assessment.
exam, yeah.
So then you look at math, and similar to some of the things you were pointing out, we are looking at certain grade levels here where you're not seeing cohorts continue to achieve as they
Yeah.
move through the district. And so that's something that we certainly have to focus on, say 3rd to 4th, or 7th to 8th. We do see our highest level, just as we saw with ELA, happen at the high school. So as students go through, they are continuing to achieve at a high level. But we would like to see similar numbers to, say, that 83 and the final column across that final last row at the bottom there. And we're not. So that's something that we're certainly increasing our focus on throughout the district.
So in 8th grade, there's a considerable amount, if 41 or 43% are proficient and above, then
Right.
57 and 59 are not. I mean, that's,
Right.
Right,
that's a lot that are not.
Right.
right.
I would venture to say, in my experience, that the grade 8 math test, this is not an excuse, but just a statement, is probably the hardest test on that board. I think it's actually harder than the grade 10 test in math, believe it or not. I don't know if Dr. Allen would agree with me on that statement, but.
Yeah, I agree. I agree, but, and this is what I'll address when I go, but we're still below where we need to be state average-wise too.
Right.
So there's a lot of reasons why it's so low, and there's a lot of stuff I'm gonna talk about that we're doing. But yes, Rich, I would agree that it is, Mr. Fitzgerald, that it is.
So like historically speaking, that it's always
Yeah.
been a more challenging.
There's always, statewide, there's a huge jump between the 8th grade math scores and the 10th grade math scores, yeah.
Then in science, it's this is a different type of test than the other two. This is one that, one is a cumulative test, so that as they get to grade 5, it could be things that they've learned in 3, 4, and 5. Same with 8, items that they've learned or topics that they've learned 6, 7, and 8. And then it's an entirely different test at grade 9. Because grade 9 is the biology subject exam. So you can't really follow a cohort through the diagonals on this. We are seeing improvement in science. It's a newer test in terms of being a graduation requirement, and we're seeing gains at different grade levels.
So we put in a couple of slides around a summary of our needs assessment, which is to show what some of the data and kind of compile that, and that's what the next couple of slides are. So basically the MCAS data shows you where our strengths are and then where our significant areas of need are as well, considerably in math. And although these grade levels at the state also saw a dip in math scores, it doesn't excuse the fact that we want to be concentrating and providing some further supports for students here, and take a look at our curriculum and really work on the alignment and providing some professional development as well, which will be a multi-year plan. So we are taking some steps to address it. We also took a look at the fall BAS, which is the benchmark assessment system, which is a reading assessment. We look at that. That is used primarily to drive instruction, individual student instruction. We don't really look at it to see, are we making a mark, but rather the teachers use it to fully plan out what the student's instruction should be in reading. So I just want to make that statement because that's something we're trying to stay really pure to. That's the meaning behind the assessment, and you'll hear more about that from the elementary schools. What we are seeing in STAR, there's several, STAR is good for some things, other things we don't like to use the data for, but there are some new reports within the STAR assessment system that allow us to look at the Common Core standards and how do their questions align and how did our students do against that. Again, this isn't a best case scenario for us for using that assessment, Down the road, what we want to do is use our common assessments, which we know fully align with our curriculum and are carefully aligned to the standards. And once those are up and running, those standards reports will be much more meaningful for us.
I think actually that was your question in the previous presentation, Mr. Thompson, around, how do we break that out with STAR? Are we able to see how we're doing on the Common Core state standards? And there's an actual report that teachers can run showing how their students are doing on the Common Core state standards off the STAR. So 3 times a year they can run that. And actually I was with Meadowbrook when they were breaking down the data, and they were looking at that type of report. They're both looking at MCAS, and they were coming back to STAR data, and it was a pretty incredible conversation that was going between the group of educators with Mrs. Dakin leading the analysis.
So with our common assessments, we can then see that we are all teaching the curriculum. How do we know that we're, and the curriculum aligns with the state standards?
Mm-hmm.
So how do we know that the curriculum aligns with the state standards, other than, can you just
Because
explain that?
Because we're building it. So the process of building the curriculum started with unpacking the standards. We've been a few years into it. And then at each grade level and content area, we identified priority standards, or these are the standards that really need to be mastered. And then we did what they call a scope and sequence, which just means a calendar of when you're introducing the units that address those standards throughout the whole school year. Our assessments are then aligned to those priority standards. So there's a couple of measures. You mentioned we're able to see that everyone is teaching the curriculum. Our actual curriculum maps and scope and sequence provide a really good tool, not just for teachers to use and provide their instruction based off of, but for, say, principals and other administrators to use as a reference point for when they're doing their learning walks, to go in and say, okay, let me review this quickly so I can see what is it that 8th grade math should be teaching, and what are the essential questions they're using to engage students, and am I going to see evidence of that in the classroom? So there's that level of accountability, and we're slowly getting into that. We have to give more time for the teachers to become familiar with it, with the curriculum that is, and make sure that it's being implemented. So like a phase 1 might simply look like, hey, I noticed that this was the lesson you were working on, or this is your essential question. I noticed in the curriculum maps, the district curriculum maps, that this is where we were. Do you know how to access the maps? So more provide supports, and later on have really thoughtful conversations around instruction between an evaluator and a teacher. So that's one level. The other level is with the common assessments. At the end of it's completely aligned to the curriculum that's been taught, and our teachers are the ones developing our assessments based on the curriculum maps. So let's say we're 3 units into the curriculum, your first common assessment is going to take place, and it's going to measure how did our students do at mastering these standards. And then you would have data meetings, because it's not good to just give an assessment and not have time to do anything with the results. So the real, meat to it is having a data meeting with the team, having them take a look at the results, and then actually plan for reteaching if necessary, or for further enrichment, or okay, we're ready to move on.
Based
So
on the common assessments.
that's right. So that's the common assessments and how they would play into effect. But both of those are really critical components.
So at which point, or what point, will we be able to relate the common assessments in our curriculum map to MCAS? And not so much STAR. Are we going to get away from STAR? I don't know. We talked about
With the common assessments come online, and we're feeling that they are more representative of how our students are doing against the standards, then we would start to move away from STAR and maybe use it more as our diagnostic progress monitoring.
So with our intervention students, you would still want to have a more frequent assessment of skills and how are they doing with that. So you'd use it in progress monitoring. I would say that we're a little ways off from what you're saying, but what we're not off from is having the assessments administered and being able to have those data meetings and have those rich conversations, which buildings are already doing with the data sets that we have. And having sat in on some of those, it's always like, even the staff, the next thing they're saying is this will be so much more powerful or so much more meaningful when we have an assessment that's really built off of our curriculum, because you have a lot further to go with, because it's based on what you're doing.
And the consistency across classrooms comes from those conversations as they discuss and identify, okay, these are the priority standards, these are the standards on which we should be ready for that first assessment. Now, they have to back map and make sure, okay, will my students in each of those classrooms be ready to hit that and show that, you know, they have the ability to master those standards at that time. So that's where your consistency across the curriculum comes from.
Are we finding that teachers are keeping up with the curriculum map in terms of, are they on pace, or, I mean?
So this is very new.
Okay.
I'd say it's too new to even make
Okay,
a
fair
judgment call on that. I find myself continuing to just point out where they are with some staff. Other staff know where they are, they're in using it, or they're emailing me saying, hey, I can't remember how to get to it. And they're doing the same within the buildings too. But they were just rolled out for 100% to everyone at the beginning of this year, so.
Okay, need some time.
Need some
Okay.
time.
Yeah. Thank you. Sure.
It's pretty much said most of everything that would be in there anyway.
Good.
So, and really, you've cut the first two goals too, so we're good. Now, so we're going to go through the next couple of goals, the first two goals, and talk about key action steps, not all of the action steps, but key action steps. So at the district level, our first goal is around making sure that all of our students receive a standards-based instruction, and that it's fully aligned with the new standards and much of what we just talked about with Mr. Thompson and the rest of the committee. So that's the first goal. It's very much aligned to the second goal, because we do mention the common assessments and how they're very intertwined. So you'll notice some repetition between goals 1 and 2.
And you'll see that the buildings, although they may not list goal 1 and 2 exactly the same, they're branching and connecting off our goal 1, which talks about a standards-based curriculum, and then they're taking it to the building level. And so what does that mean for, say, the literacy program? Or what does that mean for the math program? And you'll see that as we transition through the buildings. Sorry.
So some of our key action steps are really utilizing some of the leadership positions we have in place across all levels, one of them being the department heads. And we meet monthly with department heads, who then meet monthly with their grade level or content level teams. And through those meeting structures that we have, they will lead some monthly department collaboration. They won't hit all of these in one meeting, but some of the themes of their time together is talking about the curricular review and revision, or they may actually show people how to get in and take a look at the maps. Let's talk about some of the units we have just implemented. Do you have some ideas for revisions? And they'll have conversations like that. I will tell you, a lot of our time right now is spent on common assessment and revision to common assessment, feedback, just general information sharing. How are we going to administer the assessments? That's really a key focus for department meetings currently. And then sometimes they use that time to, we would like them to use that time to kind of analyze and review assessment results eventually when they have those common assessments ready to be reviewed, and talk about some instructional best practices to address any key findings that they find through that process. Again, it's an hour a month, so obviously they're not doing all of this every meeting, because that would make you nuts. And we want to make sure we're focusing. So for the next few months, we're continuing to focus on common assessment, development, feedback, how to access them, little steps at a time, because they have a lot of other things that they're responsible for. So we're really trying to narrow our focus to that. We've been doing learning walks for 4 years now as a district team, and through our feedback and discussion together as a leadership team, we decided that we needed to bring this to a different level to kind of meet our needs. And so while district administrators will still walk, whether it's on our own together as a team, Gordon and I, and then also myself and the principals walk, Gordon and the principals walk, we're going to continue that process. But each building is taking this and owning it on their own as well. And so they have different levels of learning walks that they're doing that involve different staff members. So some are starting with department heads, others are doing it on a voluntary basis with opening up to all staff. And again, the buildings can give you a little bit more on that.
Are those planned learning walks when they're within the buildings?
Yep.
And actually, Mountain View's already done one, and I was invited to it, so I had a chance to walk with a group of teachers, and it's a little bit different now because we want to be including teachers. Last year we included department heads. We had the entire leadership team arrive at a school. So now it's a little bit quicker hitting and a smaller feel to it because you don't necessarily have 13 other individuals arriving to the school and then have school staff. But it's interesting the discussions that they get into as they debrief what have we seen, and then they share that back out to the staff, and then they set up what do we want to prioritize for, say, the next learning walk. So having the teachers as part of it, I don't know if they were, Mrs. Santinella, if they were anxious prior to, or
No.
they certainly weren't anxious in the debriefing.
We did do it once last year, so it was
Okay.
not something completely new. But this year, we're doing 3, so.
Good.
And then we continue to offer professional development. We, particularly in technology, and we have had a really smooth rollout, and that's really due to members of our leadership team who have really taken on our technology committee and are leading that, and that's Dr. Flanagan and Michael Fredette, along with everyone else, really kind of putting that forward. But all of the feedback to the professional development is because we have this great system spelled out in our technology plan, and they're really utilizing that. As a district, we could probably rewrite this action step already, but we had mentioned that we would want at least 2 days dedicated to professional development in technology, and all of the buildings are offering more than that.
Right.
So that's great, and it allows, again, that focus and providing
20
support to staff.
20 teacher leaders across the district throughout our buildings. Interestingly enough, I think it was so successful on the 10th that Mr. Quimby, who is the head of our IT department, he was bouncing around schools, and he's committed his staff, members of his staff at the different buildings tomorrow, because we'll be doing at different times of the day technology, professional development. So he'll have staff members throughout the district at the schools.
That's a good
Yeah,
move. Very
it's
Yeah.
quite the team effort, which is great to see.
Before we leave SMART Goal 1,
Mhm.
I think if you go back 2 slides, the actual SMART Goal, we mentioned MCAS up there, but we don't mention PARC. And since we've decided as a district to go, at least in some of the grades with PARC, why do we not mention that?
So you're right, that is an error. It should say MCAS, PARC, and district
Okay.
measures, because MCAS is still in play for grade, and it should include all of it, because it's still in play for all grades, or grades 5 and 8, and the high school for science. It's in play for the high school in math and in ELA. They're fully still MCAS driven. And PARC will be at the other grade level, the other tested grade levels. We're not sure what this year when we do PARC, it will be kind of set our baseline.
Right.
So we would still want to take a look at our high school scores, and all of us should be working towards improving those as a district.
Again,
But
actually,
yes, it
as you
should
break
include
out
PARC.
the benchmark steps, one of the things we talk about, I believe, is that we are establishing baseline scores on the PARC this year for grades 3 through 8.
So as of now, it hasn't changed our curriculum maps. The fact that we're going with PARC, will it?
PARC is still assessing the standards that we're aligning to now.
Okay, so it won't have an effect on what we necessarily teach or our curriculum mapping, or will it, or we don't know
I
yet?
think what it will have an effect on is being able to, much like MCAS did when we first started that within the first few years, what it'll have an effect on is the level, understanding better the level of engagement that we need to have with our students in learning the standards. So right now we know what the standards are. We've done this crosswalk for a few years. We can see how they align. But I'm not sure as a full staff we fully understand the instructional shift needed in order for our students to be successful with those standards. And that's really where the work is going to be for the next few years. So I think PARC will allow us a glimpse into what does this expectation look like for students more so than some of the help documents we have right now, and being able to uncover that will be really helpful.
Will our common assessments, or is the goal of our common assessments to do the same?
Yes, and our common assessments are beginning to be built like that
Okay.
right now. 3 through 5 had a reworking of our open response questions, which was brought on by feedback during one of our K-5 writing times, curriculum writing, assessment writing days. And the instructional coach for ELA and myself sat down and did some work based on feedback from the staff that they would want some help in that. And so we've aligned our common open response questions to be more park-like, and we're actually going to start using their analytical rubrics to score our assessments in grades 3 through 5, which will help us begin to see what that instructional shift is.
Is that putting a little bit of a tax on the teachers grade 3 through 5, making these changes now?
It will for sure, but they're asking for it, and they themselves know that this has to happen. A lot of the coaching that's happening in the buildings with our instructional coaches is around what this looks like. Granted, for grades 3 to 5, we can only make that type of embedded PD in literacy, but a lot of the work has been, here's what that expectation looks like. Here's, let's take a look at some of the resources that are out there. I know that type of work is happening from grades 6 to 8 as well, and I know that our high school departments, ELA and math, look at what that expectation is. So it is taxing, but they're actually anxious to not wait until we have the first assessment. Like, we should start doing this work now. And our curriculum writers have been looking at resources online around next generation assessments and using that information to build our current common assessments.
Right, it's increasing the rigor. You're still using the same standards. They're, whether it's Park or another assessment, they're looking at the Common Core state standards, but it's increasing the rigor and understanding how we do that. And it's actually district-wide. That was part of the discussion that the second grade teachers were getting into at Meadowbrook. How does that change their teaching and what they do? And they were looking at vocabulary that's used in word problems in math, and which words might be more challenging for our second graders when they actually start to look at that assessment in third grade. It's not only a very worthwhile discussion, it was, I think, eye-opening for our teachers, because they were starting to look at these questions saying, okay, I may have to rework how I develop certain units so that students are getting the opportunity to look at questions like this and start to talk about how you unpack a word problem.
Well, I have to give kudos to the teachers and the students, because I feel, all knowing how much I love Park, and the fact that the state doesn't even know exactly what they want yet, I give them credit for doing what they can to keep the kids where they have to be when it comes to this upcoming spring assessment. Right. So.
Okay.
So that brings us back to goal 2. I know you had this in your packets, and it looks very wordy up here on the screen. Essentially, this is that we are going to develop common assessments that are aligned with the standards, and that they're going to be implemented at regular intervals. And those intervals look different depending on the grade span that you're in. And some key action steps are that we are providing all staff with professional development. Sorry, I just completely lost. I flew right out. We're going to provide the professional development in Edwin teaching and learning. That may be why it says analytics there, but also teaching and learning. And that's the system that we are trying right now to pilot that will house our assessments. And whether I give it paper and pencil or online, I have pretty instant results aligned to the standards, so I can get some standards reports, and I don't have to dig in and spend my time doing that as a teacher. I could have my reports after giving the assessments. Curriculum
training actually will go on tomorrow.
So we've been training right along, and they'll get some more tomorrow. But curriculum writers are going to continue to develop and refine the assessments with input from staff, and that input comes through sharing the assessments and the blueprints for the assessments through their department meetings. And then we need to do ongoing professional development. I mean, it's taken us 3 years to get this far, so you can imagine it's going to take us some longer time around how to utilize these assessments once they're up and running, And then that'll come through, a lot of that PD will be embedded through data meetings.
Will the state have any information after they take the park this spring? I know they're not making a determination till the fall.
Right.
So we're gonna have people, you know,
We will.
curriculum writers meeting, and will they give us any feel of what they might be?
We will absolutely have results
Yeah,
from
so you're
park,
gonna
and
have-
they have released items now. The park website is enormous, and I say that because I've spent time trying to comb through it. And there is a group at the state who is looking at park and trying to roll out what park is about. Here's how we're looking at it as a state, what we know, what we don't know. And even that group came together and narrowed down, if I was an educator, here's the parts of the website that I would go to most. So I'll be sharing that with staff through an upcoming newsletter soon, so that they can have a little bit of help of where should I start looking through this. There's also good links for parents and the such. And so those resources will be shared soon with staff. The staff is already, don't get me wrong, they're already digging in and really, are forward around going in, taking a look at what they need to do. This is just to kind of, again, try to give them, all right, there's so much to look at. What should I start with?
I'm sure it's just a matter of familiarizing yourself with it, and you'll know where to go. Once you, because I've looked at it and it is complex, and there's so much information there. But
there's some great resources.
There's some
too.
great resources, and I think the teachers are going to be able to, once they learn it and once they figure it out, they're going to be able to focus on pulling down what they want out of it. And I think that's the key.
Yeah, and much like MCAS currently gives you released questions, Park has that as well, even from the pilot where we didn't get results necessarily.
Yeah.
They do have some released items at each grade level that people can take a look at now.
You've seen some of the way we can go into past exams and in past presentations where we showed you online how you can go in and actually see not only the question, but then in some cases, student work around the answers, what answers may have received certain scores.
I
and
guess
what
I was just mostly concerned that by the time we have people getting together during the summer, to create curriculum for the fall, that we at least know how our children have done. Because if it looks like it's bad, not just for our children, but for the state as a whole, that we don't spend a massive amount of time changing things, as maybe the state might be changing their thought process and driving our teachers loco in the, you know what I'm saying? So I'm happy to know that when they get together by the summer, we'll have some results back.
We may
don't
have some
to wait.
results, but again,
Okay.
we're aligning to the standards. So
Right.
what this will do is show us how to engage with the standards. Our actual scope and sequence may not change. What might change is individual instructional plans.
Okay.
So these are the standards I need the students to learn. That's not going to change. What's the best way to engage in teaching them this?
Thank you.
Okay, so goal 3 is our climate and our culture goal, if you will. Because if we're going to put students in the best possible atmosphere to learn, we never want to forget that first and foremost, they have to be safe, they have to be in an environment that's nurturing and respectful, and that's true also for our staff and our parents and everybody who's involved in the school community. That's the type of environment that's going to allow people to thrive and reach the highest level of success. So that's an overarching goal. You'll see connections to that goal in all the building presentations. A couple key action steps is you've seen over the last few years that we've built and developed and implemented our student exit surveys as they leave each building. Parents actually fill one out for grade 2, but then the students start to fill it out in grade 5, 8, and 12. We also have staff surveys. Last year we also had a parent survey that went out, and we want to continue to utilize those type of instruments to see how are we doing, and more importantly then set some action steps on 2 key findings each year that we feel, okay, these are some things we can work on and accomplish in this school year and improve our culture and our climate. One of the things we did last year, I think quite well at the building level, and we're going to continue this, is providing parent and family workshops, and you'll see those throughout the year on specific topics. SMART Goal 4, you won't actually see across the building presentations because it's sort of an overarching, all-encompassing goal around the budget. and making sure that as we set these goals, that we're then utilizing our greatest resource, which is the district's operational budget, to make sure that we have the materials needed and the fiscal support behind initiatives to make this happen for our students. And so really it includes everyone in this room in that process as we take a look and develop our budget. A couple key action steps that we've been utilizing the last few years is we're always taking a look at how do we expend money in the last fiscal year, but maybe over the last 3 fiscal years, and what's our return on the investment been? That might go to answer some of your questions around certain assessments that we're using. What's our return on the investment been for that money that we're spending? Then we also make sure that we're timely in our budget developments. We obviously not only work with multiple levels in the district, but then we also work with town committees such as the Appropriations Committee, Board of Selectmen, Capital with capital planning. And so we want to make sure that we're doing that in a timely fashion so that we're ready to present to those different groups and hopefully gain their support so that as we enter town meeting, we have somewhat of a unified approach to the school system's budget and the town budget. Something that we've been doing the last 2 years, but really increased incredibly last year, was using the Google platform to collaborate on this. We created a budget request form in Google, which then, if you remember, populated a spreadsheet that you received in your packets, and so it gave you an idea of, okay, what the request was, from what building it came from, how resources might be changed to make that request happen. And as we go throughout the year, especially at the end of the year, but also in the middle of the year, as we look at to see how we're doing with some of our data presentations, we want to look at how are we doing with common assessments. That's goal 2. How many are implemented, and are they implemented in all our content areas? We have to establish baseline for the common assessments that are just being utilized for the first time, and then we build off of that. We want to see that our students, if you remember back to the CPI chart, that are we hitting those targets that have been set for us, not only based on past results, but also to try to meet that goal in 2017. We also want to see, as our surveys come back this year, how are we doing in terms of student satisfaction, staff satisfaction, and parent satisfaction across the district. And then finally, we want to be in May in a situation where our FY16 budget is not only developed, but it's supporting identified needs that come through that process. And we know that sometimes that's challenging depending on where the fiscal climate is with the town. All right. So now I think we're moving to the high school, so you can see the transition quickly. I think we changed it up because of the high school soccer playoff game, because they may need to get back up there. So in your packets, yeah, you may have Meadowbrook first.
Yeah.
We had to change it up. It's going to be in reverse order.
See if I can get this going. It shows you.
The fact that I went well over my 20 minutes, I'm going to blame on the questions that were asked.
Okay.
I am going to try to be as succinct as possible. I'm not going to read through every bullet because I know you have a lot of schools to cover tonight, but if you have any questions as I'm going through, just stop me and I'll be more than happy to answer it for you. One of the good things about the MES accreditation process is that it really allowed us the opportunity to be reflective in terms of our mission and learning expectations for the high school. And while we had some good things in place 10 years ago, it was time to revisit and make sure that our mission and learning expectations were reflective of 21st century learning. And with that, we had a collaborative approach to developing our new mission statement, which involved students, teachers, and parents. And we came up with a really nice acronym that I think kind of summarizes those key points of 21st century learning that we're after at the high school. And that is engage in critical thinking, learning collaboratively, honor diversity, and strive for success. With the mission statement, we've also developed various learning expectations that we have now put forth in a school-wide rubric And so one of the things that we're trying to encourage with our staff is to utilize and assess students in these areas as often as possible. So again, I'm not going to go through every single one of them, but you'll see that there is a focus primarily on helping students develop independent and collaborative work habits. We want our students to be able to develop effective critical thinking and creativity skills. We also place a high importance at the high school in literacy and communication skills across the content area. And then finally, demonstrating social and civic responsibility, which has always, I'm very proud to say, been a part of the fabric of the high school. When we went through our needs assessment, we not only looked at our own data within our building, but we also took into account some of the things that we discovered through the NEASC accreditation process. And one of the things that we're really working towards in the next, this year and moving forward is, although we have a learning-wide or school-wide learning rubric, we need to implement that more consistently. We've only had it in place for 2 years, so it's really been a work in process, but that is one thing, that was one of the feedbacks that we also got from NEASC, so that's something that we're honing in on. And when you do that, I think you're going to see a much more focus on those 21st century learning skills in our curriculums as well. One of the things that we also have really been trying to push for is more collaborative time for our teachers to really dig deep into the curriculum and assessments. I won't go into detail, but the district presentation that you saw earlier, I think that's consistent with all the schools, is that giving teachers the time to develop curriculum as well as the assessment, and then finding the time to look at the results of those items. We're also trying to really increase the focus on curriculum and learning expectations between the high school and middle school. We've made some headway with that, and I'll talk a little bit about that in just a minute. And then one of the things I think that's really going to be, I hope, a game changer at the high school is this focus on professional learning communities that are focused not only on our district SMART goals, but our learning expectations, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through the presentation. And then finally, one of the things that you'll see in just a minute, I think we're doing really well with the CPI for our high needs group, and I think one of the reasons why that's happening is that we've really put an increased focus on programs and services for our special education students. But with that change in model, we do need more support staff in those areas. And then finally, this was a big thing that came out of the NEASC accreditation process as well, our facility renovations at the high school to meet the ELHS learning expectations as well. And not just for the sake of, but in terms of technology, collaborative learning spaces for our students, for our staff, and again, I'll try to hit on that later on in the presentation. School CPI targets. I'm super proud of the way that we have grown in just 3 years at the high school. In 1988, we were 88%. This year, we were 98% in terms of advanced and proficient, and I'll talk a little bit about that, but you can see there's definitely been growth in ELA at the high school. We've met our target, and one of our goals right now is to kind of keep that going. With math, we are closing the gap, and it's definitely an area of focus for us. Again, also very proud of the CPI targets for our high needs students. As you can see there, we are hitting the marks in ELA for sure, and still trying to make progress with math in those areas as well. So as I alluded to earlier, we've seen huge growth in English language arts, 88, 2001, now we're at 98%, and no student at the high school failed the ELA MCAS, which is a huge accomplishment, and we are well above the state average in that area. We do have some growth to do in math. I think that's consistent across the district, but what I will say is that the high school is above the state averages for advanced and proficient in math as well, and I'll talk a little bit about how we're hoping to address improvement in that area in just a few minutes. So when we looked at our SMART goals at the high school, we really wanted to focus on assessment, instruction, and culture. And we really took the lead of the district SMART goals to help us devise these. These have been vetted by our staff. First one is focusing on MCAS, since that is kind of the mother of all assessments, if you will. One of the things that we're hoping to do is just stay above the state target for ELA. Right now, as I said earlier, we have 99.2 CPA for ELA. Our target for mathematics for 2015 is to hit 98, and that's going to take a lot of work. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, but we have some things in place to hopefully get us that goal. In terms of our action steps, I'm not going to read through every bullet because you've had a chance to do that, but in summary, what we're really trying to do is develop better assessments so that instead of being at the end of an autopsy, if you will, MCAS is given and what do? We want to try to build effective diagnostic steps along the way so that at each intervals of the year, we can take a look at the data, tweak instruction, and hopefully get us to the targets that we're looking for. As you know, the high school started with common open response assessments school-wide. The ELA open response assessments look much different than the math and science ones. They're more problem-solving based. But so those have been developed and are being utilized. And actually tomorrow, our teachers are going to be given time to take a look at our first common open response assessments and look at the areas that we need to focus on moving into MCAS season. We're also trying to, this year at the high school, move away from solely common open response assessments and create more of a broad standards-based assessment that are based on those priority standards that Valerie talked about. We're still going to incorporate the common open response assessment in these assessments, but we want to give a little bit more meat to identifying what standards our students are doing well in and the areas that they need improvement much earlier in the school year. As Valerie also talked about, the high school, we are still in the throes of developing our curriculum guides and our common open response, or our common standards-based assessments, but our goal is to have those completed by the end of the year. So as Greg spoke to earlier, next year if I go into a classroom and I go, let's say, into an Algebra 1 classroom, I will be able to make the determination if our teachers are where they're supposed to be and they're covering the material. And that's really important as an administrator when you're acting as an instructional coach, is to be able to provide teachers feedback in terms of staying true to the curriculum so that when they get to the assessment there are no surprises. So that's one thing we're working on. And then last but not least, we're trying to scaffold the skills and curriculum alignment and assessment alignment with the middle school. As you all know, we went through a curriculum change with mathematics last year. There's been a little bit of bumps and bruises trying to adjust to that as we try to align everything to the Common Core. But we had many curriculum and assessment meetings with the middle school math teachers that we still need to kind of check in. Tim and I also have talked about doing some cross-building math learning walks too, to make sure that alignment is in place. So in terms of the assessment data related to MCAS, those are our key action steps. Any questions with that? All right, SMART goal number 2, as I said, we want to focus on instruction. And for us, it's staying focused on best instructional practices. And that goes back to the instructional block, which I know you all are familiar with. And some of the action steps that we're taking is we're really trying to focus on professional learning communities this year. And if you're not familiar with that, in a nutshell, what it does is it empowers teachers. It gives them the opportunity to, first of all, they have to identify a building SMART goal or learning expectation at the high school. That's the first step. So whatever they're doing has to be aligned to our mission and goals. And from that, within their own content area, they develop, if you will, action research project that they feel will best move forward our mission statement, our learning expectations, and SMART goals. So I'll give you an example. Right now, one of our groups of teachers are working together, and some of them are working departments, some of them are working interdisciplinary, which is really exciting to see. They really like the idea of trying to explore ways in which we can utilize technology to increase student engagement, which is a big part of what we're doing as a district and in our building. So that's kind of the focus at the high school. At the end of the year, we're going to be asking our teachers to share out their work that they did. And so for a building perspective, it gives everybody the opportunity to share some good ideas. And again, it's all research-based practices. So they have to collect data, and they have to test out some type of theory or action research. So we're hoping that will really up the ante in terms of just providing quality instruction across the board. We're still doing the development of our instructional block, and again, I mentioned the curriculum guides, and we're increasing our learning walks, and that's it for action step goal number 2. And then finally, goal number 3, staying along lines with the district and trying to create a safe and positive environment. Some of the things, again, we really do think that the PLCs are going to, from the teacher level, increase a sense of empowerment and a respectful environment as they're working collaboratively. We've been taking a look at the student exit surveys. with various entities within our building. And our principal advisory committee has been huge, for me, a big help to solicit feedback from staff in terms of different areas and different directions we're going at a high school. So for example, our SMART goals gets vetted by our principal's advisory committee. Things that really have an impact on the full staff, we bring it to them, we have discussions, and we collaborate on trying to solve problems. So, and then we're also trying to stay focused on some social education workshops. We have a couple coming up right now at the high school. We have a drug-related presentation that we're going to be doing for students. We also want to do drunk driving and texting this year, and we're still going to work on hopefully putting together something for parents, but we haven't determined what that is going to be. Key measurements results, again, as I said earlier, hoping to get all the guides and assessments done by the end of the year. We want to see data analysis teams in place. We're going to work on our professional learning communities, keep the communication going through our principal's advisory meeting, and then the end of the year PLC presentations.
Dr. Flynn, how confident you are about the CPI in math? I'm probably going to ask that question to all 5 buildings. So.
It's going to be very difficult, and I will say this, and we've talked about this as a team, it is a district issue. It's much benefit to the high school if we're all moving in the same direction, and I think one of the things we've talked about as a leadership team is trying to build more capacity for us to take a look at data together, take a look at the standards that our kids are doing well, that need improvement, and then trying to build action steps together. And whenever we have opportunities to develop curriculum or these common assessments, if we're all kind of communication, I think it's going to strengthen that. But at the high school level, Mr. Gonzalez is on the case. I mean, he likes a challenge, and I'm very proud
Department chair.
with the math department that when I gave them the SMART goals, they said we've already had 2 meetings on it. So they're aware of it, and they've got some ideas, and they're going to spend some time tomorrow trying to figure out more action steps.
Kind of the high school test, if I remember correctly, really is a representation of what the students will want K through 10, not just 9 and 10.
Right, exactly. Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Flynn.
I think we're going to personal next.
Did you make the transition?
We'll see.
He's working on it.
I have confidence.
No, not yet. 04 right up.
This is where we showed good collaboration.
I just moved the transition
There you go.
here.
Yeah.
Push a button. Hey, look at this. Up and running.
Okay, so this is the Birchland Park plan of attack for this year. Our mission has been the same, certainly since I arrived. I'm not sure for how long before that. So I've had a chance to read that. So when we did our needs assessment a little different. We looked at a lot of data to figure out where we should head this year. And the first thing was we saw a lot of positive data. Our CPI went up in ELA, math, and science. It was a small uptick in math, but in math it's hard to even just sort of stop and start moving in an opposite direction. So we went up in all of those. Our school's PPI went up by 13 points, which we were very proud of. I remember that night last year when we saw the 53 for Birchland up here. It went up to 66 this year, which is pretty significant because remember with PPI, you don't drop what you had in the past. Like, so it takes into account 4 years. So go up 13 points in 1 year made us very proud. Our student growth percentage went up in ELA and math. Our huge focus last year was open response questions. A lot of our work was done around that, and our open response questions went up in ELA, math, and science. In fact, in 2013, we were below the state average on 5 out of 7 open response scores, and 1 year later, we were above the state average in 6 out of 7 open response scores. And then our low-income students met their PPI targets. So though our PPI went up, it's got to keep going up for us to meet our targets, but our low-income students did meet theirs. So we took a lot of positives from last year. Where do we still need to work? We still want to score above state average on ORQs at a higher rate, so sort of continue in the right direction there. Our percentage of ELA students at proficient or advanced is 9% higher than the state average. Our percentage of science students at proficient or advanced is 4% higher than the state average, but our percentage of math students at proficient or advanced is 2% lower than the state average. So obviously math is what we'll keep going back to, and in many ways Birchland is the epicenter of where we need to work on this. And though our math student growth percentage did go up last year, we're still below the 51% target. So that was where we saw that we still need to work. You've all had a chance to look at this. These are our CPI goals. We're doing very well in English. We had a fantastic year in science. Middle school science was one of only 2 groups in the district last year to be on target, so we were very excited to be in that. High needs also went in a lot of the right directions, but again, it's math. It's math where our biggest gaps are between the goal and where we are.
The ELA science are impressive. It's that math that just, kind of sticks out,
Yeah. So, percent proficient or advanced in ELA by grade level. Blue is 2013, red is 2014. So this is ELA. You can see we went up in all 3, and some of them fairly significantly. So, very positive year there, and overall as a school that went up.
That's right. Could you say that for a minute?
Yes. Sure.
So if I
Only a minute, though.
Just freeze on this. So if I look at the 6th grade in 2013, they were around 73%. They're now the 7th grade in 2014, and they went up to over 82%. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I'm going to show you, I added
So that's a
cohort
good-
slides.
That's even better. Okay. thank
Yeah,
you.
you're going to see cohort slides. In math, obviously a little bit of a different story. Again, our overall CPI went up, so we didn't see major dips. In fact, in 6th grade, we saw an increase. In 7th and 8th, we saw slight dips, and then overall as a school, we saw a slight increase. Science, we had a fantastic year in science. Our science CPI went up 7 points in 1 year, which is kind of our goal there is just to kind of sustain that because that's such a big growth in 1 year.
When you say science, it's science and technology. It's not just
Science
like
and
the high school biology. It's much more of a...
It's science and
It's broad.
technology, and it's
Right.
8th grade, and it's a test that assesses things they learn in the first week of 6th grade.
Right.
So science is very challenging in middle school because it's 3 different years lead into one assessment. And as a matter of fact, 25% of the assessment is technology standards, which are not taught in any of the science classrooms. They have to have tech ed for a 10-week class to get those
Right.
standards. Our science teachers did an incredible job, both along the way with this cohort and also last year in 8th grade, really being standards driven to show such growth. All right, so then I added, so this isn't in yours, I added this just to be transparent and upfront. I added the cohort data, which is just sort of the slide that Mr. Smith and Ms. Anir showed. This is ours. So this is ELA. You can kind of follow quick cohorts here from 2012 to 2014. You can see.
And that's what we want to see.
That's what we want to see. And then in math, it's the opposite. We're going in the wrong direction, so we'll keep doing. I'm going to talk a lot about, as much as we're concerned about math, we're doing a lot about math right away. So that's what we'll be talking about in a minute. So sort of our summary of needs assessment is we want to continue to work hard on our ORQs. At Birchland, we've developed 3 analytical rubrics. The teachers developed them, math, science, and writing. Everybody's used those analytical rubrics, and I think that's a lot of what led to us going up in ORQ percentages across the board. We also believe that the more we focus on the thinking that is involved in ORQs, the better off we'll be on PARC, because it's a really deeper level of thinking than just your typical multiple choice. And on PARC, a lot of the multiple choice questions kind of stem straight from ORQs, such as like, they still have to show evidence and like go in and actually highlight in the text what proved their point. So we are definitely still focusing on the ORQs, which we started to focus on last year. We want to target way more students for tiered interventions in both reading and math, and I'll get into how we're doing that. And then we want to focus on improving math teaching and learning, as well as increase the time on learning in math class as well. So SMART goal number 1 has not changed from last year, other than our baselines went up because of our higher scores in ORQs. It's to raise ORQs in all 3 content areas, ELA/writing, math, and science. I've highlighted some of the key action steps here. I'll put them all up there. We want to continue to reinforce our common open response protocol using the analytical rubrics across all content areas. For common assessments, we're doing very well on common assessments. All of our core teachers have already piloted a common assessment at the end of last year, which is standards-based. It includes multiple choice and open response. And now just about everybody has piloted common assessment number 1. So as of January or February, all of the core teachers at Birchland will have piloted 3 common assessments. So they're working, all of our minute-to-minute stress, other than the normal stress of middle school, is around getting those done. We want to get those up and running as soon as possible because Mr. Thompson, you talked a lot about like where are we in relation to the curriculum guides, and that's the balance that we're trying to strike at Birchland. It's sort of coverage or kind of refusing to move on when students don't get it, and so I always think of John Calipari, refuse to lose, and so that's kind of the mentality. We want to make sure we're covering everything and not leaving things just off the docket so kids don't even have a chance. But at the same time, if you really want to align to priority standards, you know, if the kids don't get it, you don't move forward, and you find a million creative ways to maybe pull them out of class, to do things to the side, to do things in class, and then to differentiate for your higher level learners as well. So we definitely see the common assessments as the way to do that. If the curriculum guides kind of make sure we're all teaching the same thing, the common assessments make sure the kids are all learning the same thing. So we're really trying to toe that line between coverage and refuse to lose type attitude.
Now, I have a question on the common assessment that I could have asked earlier, but the common assessment, is it given at the same time?
It's given at the same time,
For the
but
grade.
For that grade level?
yeah, so like
Subject.
8th grade English, they both give it in the same window.
Okay,
But
okay, so it's
we
a
don't
window.
give English, math, science, and social all in the same week. Like the
Right.
teachers have the autonomy to decide when in their units is the best time to give this assessment.
I'm sure that question has been answered before in other meetings, but I just.
No, but it's a good question, especially when you know that we have common assessments across content areas.
Right.
So the point that Dr. Allen just made is hugely important.
Right.
That we have to be aware of how many we're giving
Yeah, you have to plan
in a
it.
given
Yeah.
week, given
Right.
day.
So will they be having one this year coming up, like in any of the schools or any of the grades?
Common assessments?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we've given 12
So far in the school year?
so far.
That
So
was
there's
not-
common assessment 1, common assessment 2, and common assessment 3. And
No, that
we've
was-
just about finished the first round for us.
Oh.
So, and then at the end of last year, we gave Common Assessment 3 in all our core classes. So yeah, it's becoming part of the,
Did he wait too long?
Dr. Allen
Putting up
wants to
the,
say-
I'm back up, but I don't know why that's.
I just wanted to ask while they're kind of getting organized here, and I maybe should have asked a little earlier. I've got, like, for instance, I have one kid who gets the math, and I have another kid, and they're both juniors, who's just like, shoot me now. And it's always been a shoot me now, and I get it kind of situation. As the kids go through school, do we explain to them, I mean, do we really explain to them why certain math is used? And does anybody ever take the kids and sit them aside and go, what is it that we can do to help you learn this better? I mean, how is it that we can unlock whatever it is that's not allowing this information to get in?
Yeah.
Because sometimes I feel like, you come home, you get your 40 problems, you do your 40 problems, you go back to school, half of them are wrong, and there's not enough time in a class to correct all of them, and you just hope that you grasp what you can and move on. And does that happen at the younger grades as they move on, and then the older grades where they
Yeah, well-
explain why you need it?
Yeah, I mean, in middle school, that's the biggest quest of all, because, in 10th grade kids, when they sit down to take MCAS, know they have to take it, have to pass it to graduate. In 6th, 7th, and 8th, the attachment is far less automatic. And everybody jokes about middle school because it's a difficult time period in kids' lives as well. So, I mean, yes, of course, we're always trying to find ways to motivate and trying to find ways for them to attach real-life scenarios to it. I mean, the whole Connected Math program is meant to do that. Whether it is it depends, but absolutely. But there's no prescription. There's no magic elixir. So we're always working at that. And you know what? And that comes down to teacher styles as well. So some teachers have a style that works one way, and some attach kids one way, and the others have a style that attaches kids another way. But as much as we talk about the other thing that middle school kids have intrinsically is if they're playing a video game and they're on level 2, they want to get to level 3. Okay? So that's part of the common assessments, is as our teachers understand, this is what I wanted them to learn, did they learn it? If they did not, what do I do? that's going to trickle down to students as well. This is what I was supposed to learn. I did not learn it. Now I get a little chip on my shoulder, a little edge, and hopefully I'm able to sort of self-monitor, which is what standards, we're not anywhere near that, but which is what standards-based grading is all about. So I'm going to keep going even though that's not working.
Just do it one more time,
Yeah.
Ron. Can you just double check, make sure you're good? So are they does it time out?
Should.
So Dr., you're still on the goal 1 key action step?
Yeah, so the other things there are, I highlighted increased time on learning. We changed our schedule, so every class has 10 more minutes now. So just right off the bat for math, that's 1,800 more minutes of math per year. So that's a big deal. We were teaching math in 42 minutes, and by the time kids sit down and get ready and then have to leave, it's 38, 39 minutes. So you guys know we went through a major process last year to change the schedule. And that has gone well. It's up and running. Classes now end more naturally and not like, ooh, we gotta go. So 1,800 more minutes is a pretty significant amount of extra time on math just built in.
So Dr., just say this for a minute. The average student at Personal Park is getting 10 more minutes of math per day. What about the student that's in needs improvement or wanting it? They get more time than that.
I'll pay you for that segue later.
Oh.
So the first thing was...
Well, are you going to talk about that later?
No, it's right now.
He's ready.
He needed that segue right now.
You gave it to him.
So the first thing is we increase time on learning, not for the average, but for every single student.
Right.
So every single student has 1,800 more minutes of math in a year. And then we've completely changed our tiered math program. And we started the year with 110 students getting an extra math class throughout the week, either 3 times a week or 5 times a week. So that means 1 out of 6 students at Burson Park is getting extra math. So by far that's the thing we're proudest of, is tiered math exists. And that was very new, and to be honest with you, that was very new for parents as well. Burson has offered reading for a long time. So when kids came in and said, oh, I have reading, but when they came in and said, oh, I have this tiered math, we had a lot of conversations with parents where we had to explain this is why we need to increase our math scores, and here's how this is going to help, and here's what we're going to do. So within that, we're using ELHS from Scholastic, which is an individualized program. And we've also increased our tiered reading numbers to 103. So we have 213 kids getting tiered classes at Burson, which is over 1 out of 3. So following, the tiered triangle that we follow, your goal is to have 20%. We're at 33%. So we are not sitting around hoping this gets better. We are really working at getting it better.
Before we move on to goal 1, what does blind scoring mean?
Blind scoring is when students take an ORQ and it's a way to score without knowing who the kid is, because sometimes if we go in knowing who the kid is, we have a sort of a judgment before we even start. And then it's also a way, so let's say Mr. Thompson and I both taught math, we both blind score the same test to see, do we calibrate, are we looking at this the same way? Because a lot of this is guaranteeing the curriculum and the learning regardless of who the teacher is. So blind scoring just helps us make sure as professionals we're seeing student work the same way.
Okay.
All right? So school SMART goal, go ahead.
No, with the tiered math that you're doing, are they being pulled out of a class? Is it separate? Are they not having a class, like, let's say, Spanish? I'm just making that, because I know how we did the ELA.
Yeah, so for years you either had Spanish 3 times a week or reading 3 times a week. So what we did, we've changed that reading program. We've made it tiered reading, much more individually targeted. And now it's you either have Spanish, tiered reading, or tiered math. And then we also offer some tiered reading and tiered math that is instead of a special. That's 5 times a week, but that's sort of 2 models. All right, school SMART goal number 2. This is where we changed. We obviously aligned with the district to make sure we're still focused on instruction and best practices. We're really taking a look at as a school at questioning. We feel that if we can be asking better and or higher level questions every day, every minute, unit to unit, lesson to lesson, that it's going to just sort of help teaching and learning along the way. So this is our big change this year, and if you look at the slide that has our key action steps, the one I've highlighted is the second one, which is we're doing an all-staff book study on a book called Effective Questioning Strategies in the Classroom, which looks at grades K through 8. So we're really just working on asking better questions at all times, and hoping that will
Keep going, Dr.
Sorry,
Allen.
I brought in the reinforcement.
Yes, that's okay.
We feel if we can get better at that, we're going to get better at everything else. So it's a real exploration as a staff. And it just started, but really excited about that. We have a bunch of work on that tomorrow. And the author, the book is phenomenal. She's offered to come visit at the end of the year. You know, so
That'll be good.
stuff. Yeah.
Dr. Allen, what is counterpart collaboration time?
So once a week, teachers at the middle school, and that's been there, it's on Thursdays. On Thursdays, instead of meeting with your team and going over student issues, meeting with parents, 8th grade English teacher meets with 8th grade English teacher.
Oh, okay.
So that's where they write their common assessment. And that's partly why we're so along in the common assessment writing process, because our teachers have more collaboration time because of the middle school model. It just happens that way. So that's what that is.
They've built in meeting time each day for the middle school model. It's incredibly helpful. Yeah.
School SMART goal number 3 is aligned with the district's safe, nurturing, respectful learning and working environment. We had some really, really good cultural data last year. The student exit surveys were good. Our TELMAS data was very strong. Parent surveys looked good. So in all honesty, we're trying to maintain that in year 2 of Mr. Martin and I being there. And so we're looking at all that data. We've looked at it already with teachers, and we're just making sure we do a lot of the same things, as well as make tweaks where we need to.
So would you wear the same Batman and Robin costume? You're doing the same things, Dr. Allen.
Absolutely, absolutely. We got to come up with one more costume to be on a 3-year cycle. Then we'll go back to Mario and Luigi. So the last slide is key measurement and results. I sort of looked at this 2 ways. Sorry, everybody can't see it, but one is we want to make sure we have an impact on data. So I've listed in the slide our ORQ percentages and then our goals for this year, our CPI percentages and our points and our goals for this year, and then our PPI and goals for this year. But then we also obviously want to have an impact on practice. So I'll just say these 4 real quick because not everybody can see the slide. All staff will improve the planning and use of questioning through our book study and collaborative learning. We will pilot 3 common assessments in all core classes and at least 1 in all specials. Data teams will continue to look at priority standards. And teachers will collaborate effectively to improve teaching and learning while we also increase the amount of time that teachers observe one another during instruction. So we have a lot of work to do at the middle school. We're very excited that our scores across the board went in the right direction. But obviously we really need to accelerate that growth in math, hence 1,800 more minutes for everybody, hence 110 kids already scheduled into tiered math classes. Not to mention all the work we're going to do on just minute-to-minute, day-to-day teaching and learning. I've taught 3 or 4 math classes myself this year just to make sure I stay fresh in that sort of, that's what I'm certified in, so I stay fresh because it's tough. To raise math scores, you just have to throw everything at the board and see what sticks. And so I can say at the middle school, we need to raise math scores, and we are trying a lot of different things, and we will hopefully center down, and those common assessments will be a major part as well. I guess the last example I'll give is like our 8th grade math. After the first common assessment, we're going to have sort of 2 levels of response. We're going to have what the teachers do in their classrooms to hopefully improve scores. Like notice, okay, all of my students struggled on, just go to the next person, I'm done. So in 8th grade math, this is what I mean by creativity. It's the last thing I'll say. It's our teachers, we're going to work with them on what standards did they not meet for Common Assessment 1 and what can you reteach in the classroom. And then the second level we're going to do is myself and the math coach are going to pull out small groups where students really aren't getting the priority standards, and we're going to teach them, myself and the math coach, in small groups, because again, in the coverage model, that we have to move forward, but in math, if you move forward without a skill, you never catch up. So we're just going to try a lot of different things, and I'm sure they'll work.
Dr. Young, you're very close in CPI and in ELA and math, the target for 2015, in science for 2015. If my math is correct, you're looking at going up 7.2. How realistic is it that Bertram Park can achieve that in 1 year?
Well, we went up 7.1 in science last year, so it is doable. But again, like I said, it just takes all of this creativity. The test is changing as the standards are changing, as our schedule is changing. So, I mean, I believe we can do it, absolutely. But I'm an eternal optimist. But we're going at it with everything we got.
Can I ask one more question? When we're looking at the data that we get, say from MCAS, or even STAR assessments throughout the year, are you able to look at them separate, and not to pick on teachers, one teacher compared to another, but are you able to break them down by the different teachers and how well the group of students in that? And do you find that sometimes there's a discrepancy, not because it's maybe the teacher's learning style isn't working, and are you able to help the teachers move on, or, you know?
Yeah, we give teachers their results by class, by student, by class, and then we give them their results as a teacher versus the grade level average, which is very neat at our school because there's just 2 of each. So, so they get a clear picture of where they stand versus their counterpart. Of course, there's some discrepancies here and there. You definitely need to have longer term data to have any sort of judgment based on that. So I've only been here 1 year, so I just looked at 1 year. In 9 out of 10 cases, it's pretty close. It's pretty close. So it's not. But that said, yeah, we monitor that for sure.
Just before we move on to Mr. Fred, I just want to address my parents that are in the audience right now. I'm just going to ask that we hold off on any questions even for tonight, so write down your notes. Feel free to either email me, email any of the building principals where you have the question. And Mr. Gordon just informed me that this PowerPoint presentation will be available on the website at some point. It probably takes a day or 2 for you to get the link
we'll get each
put up there.
Each presentation from each school up on the.
So I just write down the notes.
Questions at the end? No.
Well, the thing is, we're on a, you know, we only have so much time for the evening too, and we want to keep it, I mean, already we're at 8:30, we still have 3 more schools to go. So just for a time constraint, we just want to keep questions sort of to here, and then you can write down your own notes, and again, feel free, and anyone can get back to you to answer those questions. Okay, so Mr. Fredette, the floor is yours.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr.
We're up, Maple Shade School. The first thing I was really happy to see was there was a mission and vision that sort of is the overarching framework for this presentation. The reason why I'm glad that this is here is because we need to do work on shared vision at Maple Shade. We really do. The first 2 pages of the Maple Shade handbook are lengthy pages that incorporate mission, vision, and philosophy. A lot of what's in those 2 pages is mission, some of it philosophy, most of it philosophy, some of it vision, and some of it description of what mission, vision, and philosophy actually are. And the language in those first 2 pages really doesn't permeate the school environment. It's not what is considered to be a shared vision. So we started back in the end of the school year last year, beginning the very beginning process of shared vision. Shared vision is not something you just write down a statement that we all agree with and then that's our vision. It really has to permeate the environment and be what we're all about. And so we did an exercise and an activity, and we came up with the words highlighted in red there. So schools that have shared values and beliefs connected to a common vision are successful. So what are those values and beliefs that we hold dear to ourselves at Maple Shade? Those were care, communication, high expectations, technology, respect, and critical thinking. And all staff had input into this initial phase of vision planning. And if you look at the part that I took out of the handbook that really does encompass what currently is vision, none of those words exist in our current vision and mission and philosophy statement that's in the handbook. So we really do need to work on this and then have that propel us into the important work we do every single day connected to what's important to ourselves and our school and our students at Maple Shade. So I was happy to bring that to the forefront of this presentation. The needs assessment. When you look at the data, the overall picture of the data, it's just published as the aggregate. But digging deeply down into the data to assess the needs of our school, I really found a lot of positive highlights in the data. And so if I go column by column, the first positive highlight is our CPI for ELA increased at the 4th grade level by 4.2 CPI points from 2013 to 2014. Our 5th grade is at 91. That increased 1.1 CPI points from 2013 to 2014. The overall was 85.7, but we had good successes in increasing in 4th and 5th grade. That was at or above 85.7. The 3rd grade cohort is an area that we need to continue focusing on and developing that cohort as they go through 4th and 5th grade at Maple Shade to be ready for middle school. The CPI math, a little bit of the same story. Our 4th grade increased by 2.5 CPI points, our fifth grade by 3.3 CPI points. The overall school was 81.5. Math is, these numbers were updated actually, Rich, so.
As I said, these are not the numbers in our presentation.
Yeah, I cross-referenced the numbers that I had.
They're right up here?
Yeah, they're up there.
Okay, all right.
You don't have the live document in front of you?
Okay.
No, this is not a Dropbox.
Yeah, I had to update these.
These are different.
Yeah.
Okay.
I had to update these.
Okay.
I wanted to make sure they're accurate. The reason why they're different from your presentation to this one is because there's a reason I can explain. I just want to make I wanted to make sure they're 100% accurate, and these numbers here are. The fifth grade math, the school was at 81.5. Fifth grade math is over that. Fourth grade was right at that. There were increases there from one year to the next. Our science, tech, engineering scores decreased. That was an area of concern for us as well. If you look at science, tech, and engineering and mathematics, it's those are two focuses that personally and professionally I have at Maple Shade. So we are working on that diligently, and you'll see that in our presentation. On a positive, the student growth percentiles in ELA at Maple Shade increased. Fourth grade increased by 6 student growth percentile points. Fifth grade increased by 12 student growth percentile points from one year to the next. That was really positive. And overall, as a school in ELA, we increased by 5 student growth percentile points. So what that says is there was a dip at the state level, but as far as aggregate, but as far as our student growth percentiles, our students compared to similar students with similar scores, we were increasing. Our student growth percentiles for math decreased at Maple Shade, however, increased at fourth grade and decreased a little bit at fifth grade. The biggest success is right here in the high needs population. I made a point at the bottom, our high needs population increased from FY13 to FY14 by 25 students. That's 8% of our population. And still, our high needs population in math increased by 5 CPI points. Our high needs population in science, tech, and engineering increased by 6.7 CPI points. Those were big, big successes for Maple Shade. We did a lot of work in response to intervention. We did a lot of work in collaboration around ensuring high expectations for all students. We're really proud of that. The other thing we're really proud about is the ELA long composition. Our long composition average score increased by 0.5 of a point on average, so it's out of 20. The year prior, we were at 13.3 in fourth grade, and now we're at 13.8. When you mentioned the dip in ELA, that historic dip from third grade to fourth grade, a lot of it has to do with the long composition. So you'll see right in our ELA SMART goal, one of the priority points is writers workshop and increasing our student outcomes in writing. So we're really proud of that. We need to continue refining and improving our RTI process. We need to have a deeper focus, professional collaboration, and strategic planning for math instruction relative to fractions, algebraic thinking, and mathematical shifts in the 2011 Massachusetts frameworks, which have to do a lot with fractions and pre-algebraic thinking at the elementary level. We need to plan instruction and measuring our progress with our common assessment expectations, which you've heard from the other schools. So that is our needs assessment. Our school CPI targets here, ELA 91.4, math 87.8, science 85.7. Our high needs targets 84.3, 82.5, 85.7 for science. We need to make sure that we improve in mathematics, we continue to improve in ELA, and that we improve in science to meet these targets. So here's a summary of our needs assessment. I did this a little bit differently because what we would like to do is have a collective focus, and this is all beginning tomorrow with our professional development day. We'd like to have a collective focus on mathematics instruction and student outcomes relative to the progression of an important concept from one grade to the next. So it's sort of the vertical alignment of our mathematics instruction from third all the way to fifth grade. We really want to in the future have sort of articulation curriculum discussions with second grade and with sixth grade, so what the expectations are coming in, and then what the expectations are for our exit mastery skills. And so what we did was we took a fraction content Common Core 2011 framework standard that we actually did not do well on in the MCAS at each grade level. It was actually our lowest scoring standard. So explain equivalence of fractions in special cases and compare fractions by reasoning about their size in the 3rd grade level. 4th grade was a progression of fractions. 5th grade, the ultimate mastery of fractions before they leave onto Birchland Park. We really want to work on the progression of those standards and the mastery of those standards and doing a much deeper focus and deeper instruction on the standards relative to fractions, because we really struggled on the expectations for fractions and the deeper understanding of fractions on the MCAS last year and going forward for what is to be the Park assessment this year. So that's really, if we just focus small and go deep, we know that our improvements will be there.
Mr. Fritter, let's go back for a minute.
Sure.
Summary of needs assessment, I mean, is this an example? Because, I mean, I'm looking at ELA, we've got to go 5.7. In science, we've got to go up 5.8. Math is 6.3. So is this something that's being done at both ELA and science also, this type of collective focus?
Yes, it is, but what we want to do is, what we wanted to do with mathematics, we want to look at a big gap in student learning.
Mm-hmm.
And the biggest gap in student learning with math that we could really put our finger on is fractions.
Okay.
When we looked at ELA, we looked at 2 assessments. We looked at 2 standards that progressed through 3, 4, and 5.
Mm-hmm.
I could have populated them here, but I really wanted to be concise in our focus. We looked at close reading of complex texts, and we looked at the changes in character and events over time through a passage and through a text, and how we construct responses around those things. That's for
So
ELA.
the ways the school committee can process that this summary also includes English and science. It's not just math being one focus, because we need to improve in all 3 areas considerably.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. The 2013-14 proficient in advanced ELA by grade level. So our 3rd grade is, our 2013 is in blue, our 2014 is in red. Our ELA in 3rd grade was just over 70 in 2013, and then just over 50 in 2014. In 4th grade, we had an increase from one year to the next. I think a lot of that has to do with our work in writing and getting that our long comp scores to increase. And then 5th grade, we had a little bit of a dip in ELA there, and then as a school, we had a little bit of a dip in ELA scores overall.
But you have good progression from the 4th to 5th grade, if you look at 2013 and 2014, correct?
Yes, we had good, we had really good progression.
Right.
We had a really good progression there, which is a good highlight of that. For math, we actually looked a little bit better from one year to the next, but we had such a decrease at the 3rd grade cohort level that it actually didn't bode well for us in the overall, but our 4th grade increased, our 5th grade increased. We had good progression to go from one year to the next of ensuring that students are meeting their outcomes going into 6th grade. And so math did have some highlights looking at one year to the next, but as a district, we do maintain that as our focus.
Are we using math investigations at the
At the moment, we are.
connect that at the,
Connected math.
At the moment, we are. And then science, we had a dip in science, and that we are rectifying. We added an actual SMART goal around science this coming year that you'll see. And we're working hard. We built scheduling time for science. Science in the past has been a twice-a-week component of instruction. It's been maybe we do a unit in science and then a unit in social studies, so then science doesn't get caught up for another month or 6 weeks later on. So we have committed to an instructional block around science every day, every week. So that's new this year as well.
I have a question, just overall, with the MCAS, because obviously we need help in math, that's just a given, I'm not making excuses, but at the MCAS level, I know that they put test questions in there. Are they tweaking things around and trying Common Core questions, and that's maybe why we've had these DIPS, I mean, is it the same test
So-
that it was the year before,
It's
I
not.
guess?
It was not. No, not at all. So
So
what,
that's not fair to our students,
So
it's
we
not
did
fair
a-
to the teachers.
there was a partial crosswalk going back 2 years in 2013 where there was something, I don't know the exact percentage, but it was something about 15% of the 2011 frameworks would be assessed. And then last year was the full year where they assessed the entire 2011 framework. So anything that changed from the from the previous framework to the 2011 was entirely assessed on that framework last year. That was the first year. And the state showed a dip. You know, when we see our student growth percentiles increase, we're really excited about that, even though our aggregate didn't increase. So you might say, how did your SGPs increase, but your aggregate didn't? It's because the student growth the state took a dip, but maybe no. And we didn't dip as far as the state, so we maintained growth at the student growth. So that was a success, you know, sort of an untold story unless you look deeply at the data. Our SMART Goal 1 is all students will improve their comprehension and understanding of grade level text by participating in a balanced literacy program of whole and small group instruction, specifically guided reading, that focuses on all components of reading instruction, phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. And the measurability of that goal is down in a later slide where I measured all the goals together in one slide. Some of the key action steps here in literacy, we have a lot of them. All special education and reading and ELA teachers will refine their writers' workshop practices. We really want writing to be a main focus and focal point of our work, and especially writing in response to reading as well. That's another major component. What students are asked to do at the elementary level in response to what they've read on multiple texts and multiple genres and complex texts, we need to develop rubrics that measure their outcomes appropriately and accurately according to the expectations, and continue to work and refine this work. Our fifth grade model departmentalized this year. We have a new fifth grade model. It's departmentalized. The teachers are excited. The parent feedback has been great. The student feedback has been great. But one thing that we want to do is make sure that the learning is still personalized. So I wanted to, right in this action step was mentioned that the fifth grade teachers specifically will incorporate an integrated unit-based model in their everyday instruction and meet weekly to modify their approach and progress, utilizing the literacy coach as their resource for ensuring learning is authentic and connected across content areas and personalized. And they've been doing a great job in their common meeting times. They've been doing a great job collaborating with a literacy coach. Our literacy coach is providing PD for the ELA focus group tomorrow in the afternoon for our full day PD. The afternoon session is geared toward that and meeting that goal. Teachers will implement a schedule for the benchmark assessment, the STAR, and the common assessments utilizing data review cycles to plan instruction. We've been doing a great job with this. October and January, we analyze our data results. We create intervention charts. We enrich learning through the Gifted and Talented program at that time as well. And we progress monitor and benchmark the progress of students. And seeing our high needs has increased at Maple Shade and our high need scores have increased. It's really attributed to a lot of the work that goes into these data review cycles, the collaborative efforts, the intervention planning, and the work that happens on a day-to-day basis to meet the needs of all students.
Mr. Fedek, your gifted and talented teacher, Mr.
Axelrod.
Is all students?
He does a push-in model with all students, and then he does a pull-out model as well. And at the third grade level, he actually takes the assessment data and provides an enrichment model at third grade also, which was new last year.
For all students?
Yes,
So he takes the data and where we show weaknesses, if I can use that word, where we have to do better, he's actually taking that data and then using it to instruct the grade 3 students.
So he's taking the data and he's actually taking the top off of that data and he's enriching those learners at grade 3 as well.
So you're also...
Because the work that we put in, the work that we put into our high needs population is heroic work, and we just want to give these kids the best we can. But we can't forget about our top learners either, and it's difficult. It's difficult. It's a great task, and we're up for the task. And Mr. Axelrad's been great. He's an out-of-the-box, flexible thinker, and we do our very best by all of our students. But our advanced numbers went down, and it bothers us. We want to maintain those advanced numbers. So we're 100% committed to it. Teachers will develop common writing and writing in response to reading rubrics with student exemplars at each grade level. We are aligning our analytical rubric focus, much like the high school and the middle school has. And it's starting with our first common assessment at the ELA level. Rubrics will be aligned to the writing expectations outlined in the frameworks. Models and exemplars of student work samples and mentor texts are utilized. Instructional components will be planned to ensure that students understand the rubrics. Common assessments are implemented. And then our school will continue to make a commitment to response to intervention as an integral component of our regular education, our pre-referral process, and our evidence-based practices. And that goes back to our tiered instruction model and our enrichment model. Our school SMART goal number 2 is all students in grades 3 through 5 will be provided standards-based math instruction using math investigations and additional materials. Students will show they have successfully mastered the standards based on successful completion of district-wide common assessments. And I have some measurement data, like as I mentioned in the later slides. We are identifying in the 2011 state frameworks the standards that need to be instructed at each grade level, which is what you saw in the needs assessment slide. I'm sorry I didn't populate the ELA. It was a good idea. I should have done the same. According to shifts related to expectations and student outcomes and MCAS data analysis. I just skipped over that. There we go. Teachers will follow the district units of instruction that have been written and shared. Mrs. Anir spoke about that. They are new. This is the first year of full implementation. It's a continuous cycle of input and feedback at the school level, the department head level, the grade level, discussions. And so we're working, really diligently as a district to ensure mastery of these common assessments, which are rigorous assessments. Teachers will utilize guided instruction practices in mathematics. This is really going with a good, strong, differentiated model. You have your top learners, you have lower learners, and other learners in the middle. And you want to differentiate your instruction with small groups and guided instruction in mathematics. And then our commitment, here's an addition to our school to intervene and to work with mathematics, is our commitment to 3 30-minute intervention periods per week will specifically focus on intervention and enrichment for mathematics across grade levels. Interventions will be progress monitored utilizing valid and reliable math assessments that focus on computation, number sense, concepts, and applications. So we have an additional 30 minutes that we are providing focused intervention time for mathematics.
Yeah, for all students, or those students
Identified.
So if remember, I'm a former high school principal, so we put them, that's why I'm looking at it. If they're getting math 5 times a week, certain students are getting math 8 times a week. Is that correct?
Well, they,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So, yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Extra section, extra
It's an
section.
extra
All you have to say is
section.
yes.
Extra what?
An extra block.
Section,
An extra block.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of the model that Dr. Allen explained, kind of just trying to make this similar.
Yeah.
You think of that triangle?
Right.
It's the core plus more.
Right.
Oh, yeah, right.
He's looking at the schedule.
So tomorrow, beginning at our first district-wide PD day in November and continuing throughout the year, our teachers will analyze and plan for the progression of fractions instruction at and across each grade level. MCAS data and the Massachusetts 2011 frameworks will be broken down in specific revisions to our math units. Instruction and intervention will be planned to ensure that our students are prepared for the next grade and beyond relative to in-depth instruction in mathematics, focusing on fractions. If we just can improve in fractions, I know it'll bode well for us as a school and for the students beyond, because there's such an in-depth focus in this frameworks with fractions and pre-algebraic thinking. Math learning goals will be set and measured according to the district common assessments given 3 times per year. SMART Goal 3, all East Long Meadow Public School staff will foster a safe, nurturing, and respectful learning and working environment, resulting in an increase of stakeholder satisfaction. I'm really proud to show this. This is a little different take on it. I'm really proud is when we took our student climate exit surveys in 2013, the biggest glowing area, so all of the targets was teachers care, I'm safe, all those types of big things that are important to kids. We were high 80s or 90% satisfaction rate according to the students. The one area that really was not, that students did not agree with was My classmates respect differences in other students, boy or girl, what they believe, where they are from, and the way they look. In 2013, 29% of the students disagreed with this statement, only 51% agreed. We did a comprehensive goal planning around uniqueness and diversity. I know, Mr. Thompson, you were one of our visitors. We had school committee members visit, we had bus drivers, we had cafeteria workers, we had paraprofessionals, we had police department, we had a lot of, you know, our superintendent was a visitor, and we really focused on, we had literature that was put aside by our librarian, and we focused on uniqueness and diversity. And then when those students left Maple Shade last year, only 8% disagreed with that statement. So we were really proud of that, and we thought that that was good work, that we all came together as a staff and a community, and it really reflected good core values and good high-quality character and morals. So that was something that I really wanted to share. In addition to that, our MassTel data, we added 2 more seats to our principal advisory. We now have a principal advisory committee of 7 professionals, paraprofessionals included, and we're working on culture, climate, vision development. We're looking at our MassTel survey data, and we're looking at just fostering continuous school improvement. We've broken down the MassTels into sort of 10 areas of focus for the year, and the teachers have been great. We've all been great together in building a stronger culture and commitment around these things. And then SMART goal number 4 is instructed in science, utilizing empirical design, inquiry-based instruction, and experiences that extend their learning and understanding of the scientific world around them. Teachers will give children the opportunity to build models, designs, or experiments in teams through a trial and error process that requires problem solving and critical thinking to solve a problem, devise a solution, or create a working model and design. Also, children will make observations, read research or reports, ask questions, hypothesize, test their assumptions, change experiment outcomes with variables, and share scientific discoveries to learn new information or unlearn misconceptions. We're also piloting 2 units of study from 2 different curricula, and we're during our science curriculum review process right now, so there are 2 teachers at each grade level that are working to pilot these materials, which do or will address some of the things that I put in goals 1 and 2, which is going to be a lot better than the textbook. And engineering and its design process will become a growing component of our science, technology, and engineering curriculum and our GT program. 2 examples of this are robotics instruction is in the classroom in grades 4 and 5. I know, Mrs. Boucher,
I was impressed.
You were an observant of that. We were happy to have you. That was great. And ELEAF was a big contributor in that, along with Berkshire Bank and Horace Mann. They all came to observe and to see what was going on in the classroom. That was exceptional. And we also do an invention convention, and the use of the engineering design process happens in all GT push-in classrooms. I was just in a 3rd grade classroom, and they were working on inventions diligently. It was really exciting. And here are the measurement results. So for ELA STAR, we want 100% of our students to improve their academic proficiency, with 85% being on or above target. MCAS/PARC, we have a CPI target of 91.4. Our average common assessment rubric score of 2.5 plus is what we're shooting for as an overall on our ORQs. That's evidenced by an average of 2.2 as a school on MCAS 2014. I went through and I averaged every single open response score, and we came up with a 2.2 as a school. So we wanted to set a target to make sure we're ahead of that, so we set that for 2.5. Mathematics, there's some similar ones to above, especially regarding ORQs. And common assessment items related to fractions will improve over the course of the year. I can't stress how important fractions is at the elementary level and how hard it is to get in-depth instruction and learning at that. And our CPI target is 87.5. Our school climate and culture, we have a MassTel is focused from we have a focus from the principal advisory, and we've broken that down into 10 components, and we're going to actually survey our staff 2 times per year. We're going to do a staff survey in January and a staff survey at the end of the year to see our growth on these components that we felt were important for continuous improvement. We're going to continue with parent satisfaction surveys and our 5th grade exit surveys. And for science engineering, we're going to build in critical thinking, inquiry, engineering design, experimentation, and technical and expository writing as components of science. And our CPI target is 85.7.
Mr. Fredette, just if I could sum up, so in mathematics, we have an ITI program 3 times a week.
Yes.
In science, you have solidified or stabilized, making sure that there's a block each week that's being taught.
Yes.
In English, you mentioned RTI in the results. Do we also have an ITI intervention in English, ELA?
Yeah, see, the ELA, it's really strong.
Yeah.
So, for example, we have a literacy coach, we have a reading specialist, and there's a lot of evidence-based programs that build readers. So, I can name you 5 or 6 of them offhand that we use, like Read Naturally, or V&V, or LLI, or Just Words, Wilson. There's just a lot of things in the ELA world that help to intervene with students to get them to be readers. Mathematics isn't as strong. There isn't as strong as an evidence base at the elementary level to have specific targeted interventions to boost computational fluency or to boost certain concepts or certain applications. So what we do is we take our own analysis of number sense, our own analysis of ability to compute numbers, to do area and perimeter, and we put interventions in place for those targeted concepts and skills. And the supports for that aren't as robust in East Longmeadow as they are in the reading world. So what we had to do was increase that 30-minute block. What we have to do is gather around together. I've been present at the 4th grade Common Planning Times the whole year, and they are devising pre-assessment and post-assessment to build number sense for the 4th grade students, because until we get to those in-depth fractional instructional components, all the children need number sense. So, so that's a lot of the work that we're doing with math, ELA, and with science.
Thank you.
Thanks. Oh, I'm sorry.
Mountain View's up.
Mountain
Yep.
View. Yeah,
She's
I'm just
gearing up.
waiting for him. Okay.
He's gotta go. Homework.
Yeah, that's all right.
Did you lose it again? Oh.
Nope.
Oh, it's up there.
I know my audience. Okay, so the Mountain View SMART goals. The first slide is our mission statement, which has not changed since I've been there, but I think it is still applicable. We're talking about meeting the challenges of the 21st century and maintaining a safe and nurturing environment. So we're happy with our mission statement right now. Our school CPI targets. The first column is what our CPI was this year, and then the second column is what our target is for the end of the school year, 2014 results, and then what our target is for the spring of 2015. So 90.0 in ELA, 85.8 in math, and 86.6 in science. And then you can see the last column is what our goal is for 2017 when we are finished with the cycle. And then at the bottom are our high needs targets. The science is NA because we don't have enough students in the high needs category for them to give us a CPI rating. And that's why that says NA. So our ELA proficient and advanced by grade level. Most of you know from my past history, this is not my favorite slide because we're not comparing the same groups of students. Right. So I think we're still very strong. Grade 4, we have our little dip, just 3 percentage points. But we have to remember the test changed. And also I had 2 classes that did not take the ELA test because they were the park field test.
Yep.
So potentially their scores could have made a difference in that percentage.
But you still got a good I mean, if you look once again at grade 3, 20, 30.
Well, I have my next slide is the cohort.
Okay.
And I gave you a copy of it because I didn't originally have it in there.
Okay.
So this is the cohort. So if you look at grade 5, which of course is where I have the most data, 2012, they started off at 69%. When they got to 4th grade, they were 75%, and then when they got to 5th grade, they were 80% proficient in advanced. Grade 4, 2013, that's when they were in 3rd grade, they were at 68%. 4th grade, they were at 72%. And then, of course, 3rd grade has only taken it the one time, and they were at 67.
So exactly what you're seeing in grade 5 is you want to see the increasing
Exactly.
of steps.
Right.
Yeah. Yes. And then this is proficient and advanced in math by grade level, not cohort. This is just the grade levels, 2013 and 2014. There was a significant drop in grade 3. Again, we saw that across the district and across the state. The test changed, the standards changed, you know, the
Right.
bridge document changed, just as we've said before. And the only thing we can do is work to improve it. Then this is the cohort. So again, grade 5, starting off in 3rd grade is the blue, 58%, 68% when they got to 4th grade, and 80% when they got to 5th grade. In 4th grade, there was a drop. We typically have a drop in 4th grade. You saw that on the district cohort chart every year. Also, these students, all of the students were included for the math. Even if they took Park, they were still
Right.
included for the math. And then the 3rd grade has the one test. Do you have a question, Greg? You
No,
have a
I was
question?
just processing that.
Okay.
Even if they took the park, they took.
They
the
still
math.
took the math.
Right.
Yes. So there were 2 classes in 4th grade that took
Yeah.
a ton of tests last year.
Yeah, yeah. We discussed all of that.
Yeah. Okay, so this is our science, grade 5 from year to year. So in 2013, our proficient advanced was at 52%, and this past year we went up to 61%. Different kids, same curriculum,
Yeah.
but there was a big increase in our science scores from last year. I'm trying to make sure I'm going fast, but I want to. There was one thing I just wanted to talk about quick on the math, because this is important to. Tomorrow, we're actually doing data teams for most of our day. And our data teams this time are focusing on student performance rather than on standards, because we've had 3 ACT team meetings already this year, and ACT is when we bring together a teacher from every grade level, myself, the guidance counselor, and the school psychologist, and we talk about kids who are struggling. So if I'm a classroom teacher and I have a child who is really struggling, I fill out a form, I come to ACT, I talk about what their issues are. Well, the first 6 kids we saw at ACT all had issues, and this is at all different grade levels, 3, 4, and 5, all had issues around number sense. I had 5th graders that are off the charts on the benchmark assessment but can't do place value. So I started almost immediately. We identified kids in each homeroom who were struggling in math on certain concepts based on the STAR and what the teachers were seeing in class. And we started an intervention program. I kind of mentioned it at the last meeting, where I sent a letter home to parents saying, these children need extra help in math. I'm going to pull them out of science or social studies twice a week to give them extra help in math, a 45-minute block in a very small group with a teacher. This isn't a computer intervention, it's face-to-face small group. And at the end of 6 to 8 weeks, we're going to give them the STAR again and see if they've improved. And if they have, great. Back in the classroom, back into science and social studies. And they still are having science and social studies 2 other times, so they're not missing all of their science and social studies. And if they're not, then we need to switch it up and see what we have to do to help them again. We have
So they've already been through their 6 weeks?
not
of
yet.
this- oh,
we're
okay.
we're probably in week 4,
Okay.
I want to say. So we had 20 students that we identified as our highest priority. Only 1 parent declined the intervention. And we have 12 students on the waiting list, and most of them are at 4th grade. So we know that's our area that we need to really focus on. So tomorrow, we're almost having what I would call mini ACT meetings for a 3-hour time period, where each grade level is going to focus an hour on kids who are struggling, an hour on kids who are maybe average and are falling out of our sight because they're not struggling, but they're not excelling, so we're going to focus on them, and then an hour on students who need enrichment, and how we can, maybe they didn't qualify for GT, but they still need enrichment, and third grade doesn't have a pull-out model. So how can we enrich the kids in third grade who really need it? So for the hour that they're talking about the struggling students, the guidance counselor, the school psychologist, and the speech and language pathologist will be with that grade level, and we're alternating. So then when they move to the they've been with the 5th grade, they move to the 4th grade, Deb Berry, the GT teacher, will be with the 5th grade, talking about the kids who we need to enrich. And so we're going to try that tomorrow and almost have like mini ACT meetings on all of these students.
I'd like to hear how that goes.
Yeah.
You know? And I'd also, in like the 6 weeks time frame, hear about those students that you pulled aside for the extra help
Definitely.
and see if it improved.
I can
But
definitely
it sounds
give you
like a
that.
great plan, because I know we always say so much about the kids who need the help.
Right.
But then you get those kids in the middle who kind of like go along.
Right.
And then especially the ones that can use the extra enrichment, or the ones that did not qualify, but you know have a
Right.
little bit more that they can give.
Right.
And that you're trying to enhance that also. I really appreciate that.
So that's our plan. That's one part of tomorrow,
Yeah.
not the whole day. Okay, where was I? So, needs assessment.
Summary.
So our students are high performing when you look at us compared to the state, but we're still not meeting our CPI goals. So we still need to work in that area. Curriculum units and assessments, you've heard ad nauseum. We can move on from that. The data teams, that's what we're starting tomorrow. Sorry, I'm being blunt.
It's okay.
The analytical rubrics were already talked about, so we're going to be working on those. And for SMART goal number 3, which I'll talk about later on, our parent and student survey results are very positive. There were some areas, and I'll show you one later on, that are just, they're so disconnected, we need to figure out why. And then the staff results on both TELMAS and the ELEA survey that was used in the district showed very high satisfaction in every area except 4 questions on professional development, which we're trying to work on through my principal's advisory also. So SMART Goal 1 is ELA, and it's based on the district goal, talking about assessment data, the curriculum development, and focusing on what we need to do to get ready for Park. Action steps are the curriculum units, the interim assessments, the analytical rubrics, and analyzing the assessment data, which I just talked about a little bit of what we're going to be doing tomorrow. And then I want to see the teachers incorporating the use of instructional technology more. We received iPads last year, some from eLeaf and some from our PTO, so we have a classroom set of 25. The teacher who originally wrote the grant for the iPads developed a Google Calendar that the whole school shares, so we can sign out the iPads. Everyone can see when they're available and when they can sign them out, and they're signed out every day. We're using them constantly. That was an awesome addition to the program. So part of our day tomorrow in technology is teachers signed up on a menu. Maybe they want to focus on how they can use the iPads more. Some of them are still learning the MacBooks, so some of them are going to be going to that with the help of the IT department. And then we use the Mimeo almost all day long at Mountain View. And we bought the Mimeo, I bought 2 Mimeo vote systems a couple of years ago where the students can take assessments kind of with a handheld device. And not everyone learned how to use them, and a lot of the teachers want to use them, so one of the teachers is volunteering to do a session on that tomorrow. So that's how our afternoon will go. SMART Goal 2 is identical to SMART Goal 1, except it's for math. So we're still working on curriculum units and common assessments. And the action steps are pretty much the same, except for number 5, which is where I say we're implementing the Tier 2 interventions for the students we've identified as struggling in math. And SMART Goal 3. As I said, this has always been I think I'm the most proud of the work we've done in this area while I've been at Mountain View. We're a very cohesive staff. We get along well. We have fun. We had a fundraiser last week at Fenway in the rain for part of it. Where
Did you go?
yes,
Even though I don't have a student
she
in
doesn't have a
Mountain View
student there
right now,
anymore.
I still went.
Basically what it was one of my 5th grade teachers has always wanted to drive the thing that picks up the golf balls. So I said, well, wouldn't it be fun if we had teachers take turns driving it while the kids hit golf balls at you and raise money? And so we did it, and we raised a lot of money.
Got a
And
protective cage.
Yes.
yes, there's a
Yes.
cage. There's a
For
cage.
those who might be viewing at home.
And trust me, they didn't drive far back. They
No,
were pretty
we were
close,
close.
and they were
We
getting
were
hit.
close. And I was egging them on while I was in there. But one of the parents came up to me and said, I'm really impressed with your MCAS scores and how well the kids did on this and that. And I said, that is great, but I'm more proud of what's going on here because we had so many staff members there and they were all taking turns in the tractor and the kids were having a blast. And I think, whatever success we have stems from the fact that we all get along, we have fun, and we try to make it a good working environment. So we're going to hopefully continue that.
I think that's critical. I really, because you guys are facing enough challenges. I really, I appreciate what you're saying, because I think that is critical as we move forward, that everybody's on the same page, and this bonding and team building, it all works.
Friday mornings, the bus drivers get a kick out of Michelle Bongiovanni, the PE teacher, puts music on the intercom every Friday morning as the kids are coming off the bus, and the teachers are in the hallway dancing, and the bus drivers come in for various reasons in the morning and laugh hysterically at what goes on Friday mornings. But it's fun, and it builds a good climate. So basically what everyone else talked about, with the surveys, we're looking at all that. We're continuing all that. Amy Pelzick, my school psychologist, implements the MARC anti-bullying curriculum, and she teaches it to every student in the school. And this year she wants to do an anti-bullying week, which we're going to incorporate in January. And the Falcons sent us an email last week that they come out to the schools with players and they can focus on anti-bullying. So she's already arranged, we're going to have the Falcons players and maybe Screech for an assembly in the afternoon to reinforce everything Amy's been teaching in the anti-bullying curriculum. And she's also going to do a workshop with Norma Campbell at night that week for parents about what we're teaching the kids, so they hear the language that Amy's teaching them so that parents understand. And then later in the year, Norma is going to do something for parents on cyberbullying, because every kid in 5th grade pretty much has a cell phone, and there's things going on, on the bus, and so we really feel like this is something we have to get after this year.
Wow, thank you for sharing that.
So my measurements for the end of the year will hopefully show us improving on the district interim and common assessments, and hopefully Park. We won't know that, I'm sure, until the fall. We're still striving to our goals in CPI. I will be sharing action plans that we develop tomorrow that I can redact student names and share what happens with those kids by the end of the year. Classroom walkthrough information, and hopefully sign-in sheets and evaluations of the parent workshops will show that we've reached out to people in a positive way, and that all of our survey data will still be really positive. And that's it. Did I go fast enough, Rich?
You mentioned math and English. Do you also mean science to try to strive towards
Yes. Yes, I didn't have a science goal, so I was only focusing on the ELA and math.
Appreciate that. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Sorry,
Thank you.
I had to disconnect.
All right, so we are moving on.
Uh-oh.
Alrighty.
So, how you guys all doing?
Very good.
I think they need a stretch break.
No.
After this.
Right after
Go stretch right now. Okay, so I just want to get right into the mission statement. We don't own it. I don't own it, but we're going to own it because this is something that we're going to work on. I think, like Michael had said before, it's really important to have a shared vision. One of the things that we did, and I told the teachers, don't feel bad, but who could tell me what our school vision statement is, mission statement? And these are people that have been there for a long time. And it's not to put blame on anyone, but they really didn't own it. So I was curious to find out who worked on it, and I asked Judy Fletcher. It was before her time as well. So what we're doing is we're going to start off with core beliefs. We actually watched some videos, and we noticed that our mission and vision statement are almost identical. So we're doing a lot of research on the differences between mission and vision statements. We're doing this through our Principals Advisory Committee, and also we are going to share drafts and get feedback from student council where we have parents on board, and also from staff as well. So that's just some of the important work that we're doing. So for needs assessment, again, I'm going to kind of do the same thing that Gina did, is kind of just bullet and highlight, but please stop me if you have any questions. So for the needs assessment, we're absolutely looking at data, but we're also, and I think it's very valuable, and Gordon was a part of this when we had our data analysis and planning meeting, is we took a look at third grade MCAS data, and Michael had shared with me some things that as a staff they identified as areas of concern. So we talked about fractions for a while. We talked about what does it look like, what does the work need to look like in kindergarten, in first grade, and in second grade. So we're taking a look at third grade MCAS. We also previewed some third grade PARC math sample questions and took a look at the rigor of those questions. We took a really good look at the STAR assessment data, and we looked at it through the standards and also item analysis. BAS data, always BAS data. But what we do with BAS data is we really look at it to identify a lot of our flexible groupings in our reading workshop with guided reading. We identify independent and instructional reading level, and also we're working on the common assessments. And also we get input from our department heads, instructional coach, our principals advisory committee, school council, and our full staff. We get input from them regarding our SMART goals and also for our PD for the year. Okay, so what I did is I asked Valerie, so for CPI, what she did is she basically gave me the whole third grade CPI target. So that's what I have up top. And then we wanted to have data that was meaningful to us. So for right now, we took a look at the STAR targets. And what we did is we wanted to take a look at increasing by 5%. What we want to do as well with the common assessment data is this year we want to get baseline data so that we can set target goals for next year as well, because this is going to be the first year school-wide that we have district common assessments. So
we saw an improvement from 213 to 214. I mean, I know it's a different cohort, but
right, and it's interesting because we did. So there's a few things. We wanted to look at the BAS, and we took a look at in each classroom and every child, we took a look at how many kids were proficient and above. And we took a look at the STAR reading and the STAR math. But we did see a correlation with the data from last year and this year as well. We do know, and I think Val had mentioned it in one of the earlier meetings, that we do see a little bit more, a better correlation with the ELA, with STAR reading and MCAS, but not as much with the math, so.
Is the STAR switching over to as they ask their questions with the new Common Core assessments, or are they still kind of the way they were 5 years ago?
They do have them aligned with Common Core.
They're starting to align.
Yep.
So you can actually pull reports
You
to
can
see
pull
how your
reports
students
with
are
Common
doing
Core.
against Common Core state standards.
Okay.
Yeah, it's important to know that it's a norm-referenced test, though, and it's really
Right.
best used as a universal screener. So it looks at basic skills and basic skills that you would need to be successful in that particular area. Whereas MCAS and PARC are more, there's an end goal for everyone, and that's what you're aiming towards. So there are different focus on each assessment.
Okay, so based on the data, I'm just going to highlight a few of these things. But one of the things that we're trying to do is we want to make sure that we make best practices common practice, so that maybe a few years ago, the writing workshop might have taken place in maybe a few pockets within the school, where now what we're trying to do is we're trying to make sure that there's a common understanding of what writing workshop it looks like in all of the classrooms. The same thing with reading workshop, so that everyone is doing guided reading and guided instruction. This is new for kindergarten. The kindergarten teacher said, Lisa, we've never done small group guided reading in kindergarten in the past, and now they are. I think that's why we are seeing some improvements. The feedback from the teachers, it was really exciting because we've got a huge push on writing. As Michael said, it's really important. A lot of the research says when your school focuses on writing, you're going to see an increase in achievement. We have to make sure that our kids leave being able to express themselves in writing, because so much of the assessment that we're seeing later on, they have to explain themselves. So some of the and I think this is just as important as any of these assessments that we take, is teacher feedback. I had teachers telling me that when they did some of the initial, we call it on-demand assessments for writing, I had teachers saying, first grade teachers, Lisa, not one child cried during this assessment. They wrote. Joanne Hasbrook said the stamina that these kids have for writing now is unbelievable. Where they are now at the beginning of the year in first grade is where they were at the end of the year. So it speaks to the work that kindergarten is doing. Second grade is saying the same. The kids are coming in, with so many things that they're owning now. So they're seeing it. They're also seeing stamina in reading as well. So just those anecdotal feedback from the teachers are important. So it's the first bullet, build on school-wide comprehension instruction that's intentional, explicit, and focused across all content area. And I'll talk about that a little bit later when we talk about some of the PD that we've been focusing on in close reading and writing. And also, and something that hopefully we could use a lot of your help with, is the aligning the half-day and full-day PD with the assessment calendar, so we increase additional collaborative time to analyze data and plan instruction. So what we're really hoping is that when you guys all get together to take a look at the half days and the full days, as a district, we can really take a look at the assessment calendar, so it aligns, so that right after that we have that time, because we were discussing this, because right now what I had to do is I had to get substitutes to cover the grade levels. But if we can maybe align it, it'll work really perfectly, and then we can devote that time. And then also, because math is such a focus, to focus on formative assessment and making thinking visible during math instruction.
Can you just explain what that means?
Yeah. So one of the things that the PD that we want to talk about is we call it accountable talk in math, especially when we see in the upper grades, we see that in a lot of the assessments, it's not just enough to, for example, complete an algorithm, but you have to explain your thinking or you have to show your work. So we have to do a lot more PD in this. And one of the ways, especially in the early grades, is we first have to get them to explain it with words first, right? That comes first. So we want to talk about and actually model and teach students talk moves that they could use. For example, if you work on a problem and a student comes up with a solution, we want to teach kids, it's almost like reciprocal teaching, to have that conversation to say, I agree with what he said because, I disagree with this because, or I'd like to add on to his thinking. And believe it or not, you can see this happening in first and second grade, and even in kindergarten to some extent. So we really got to focus professional development on that.
Or if something can go home with parents too, to show them how they can work with their child.
Like certain talk moves exactly. And another thing that we want to definitely do, and I'll talk about it later, is a math night for parent workshop for parents as well. Okay, so I'm going to move on to our SMART goal, and really with the elementary schools, we do have an alignment with our SMART goal. So all of us have, as our SMART goal, one was the balanced literacy that you saw. The one thing that we added into ours is we actually added in, we wanted to be explicit with this, was language word study, because right now as a district, at least in our grade levels, it might look a little different in some of the classrooms. So we're really at stage 1 with our language word study, and I'll talk about that in a bit. So just some of the key steps. So I think Gordon talked a little bit about the first one when we get together to meet to collaborate. We discussed the benchmark assessment, the comprehension conversation. We calibrate student responses on the benchmark assessment. This is huge and this is important. We need to make sure that when we're grading and we're scoring, we're doing it with fidelity. And that doesn't mean to say that teachers are purposely, that they're not scoring. Maybe some of the scores are elevated, but it's just it's about professional development, and it's just about us getting a little bit better at this craft. So one of the things that we did at this PD is we used some of the time to calibrate. One of our second grade teachers, Ursula O'Donnell, allowed us to videotape, and we also got permission from the parent, a student taking the BAS. So all of us at the same time, while the student was reading and answering questions, we all had the BAS and we all scored alongside. We did that same one, even though it was a second grade assessment. We did it with kindergarten, first grade, second grade. Teachers said after this, we have to do this all the time because this is so important for us to calibrate. So we got a lot of good feedback with that. Another thing I wanted to focus on, all teachers will be provided with professional development focusing on the components of interactive read aloud and close reading as a means of text-based analysis. We still need to get kindergartners, first graders, and second graders to read closely. We want them to be able to read a text and provide evidence from the text when they're, coming up with meaning or Another thing is we talked about some of the targeted coaching that we're doing this year as well, is Eileen Driscoll is working with groups within a grade level. So for second grade, they're focusing on writing with units of study. So she'll take either half of a grade level or a full grade level, and she'll go into a classroom, she'll model a lesson, and within that time they come back out, they debrief on the lesson, and then they get to practice it. So it's model, debrief, and practice. First grade has a different focus and kindergarten has a different focus. So that's been really well received from the teachers. They feel like they're getting a lot out of that. And then the other thing I really wanted to focus on with one of our key action steps is, so what we're going to be doing, and this is new this year, is teachers will administer three baseline on-demand writing assessment in the 3 areas: the narrative, the opinion, and the informational. So we're giving 3 in the beginning of the year just to get the baseline, and this is going to be for the DDMs, and it's going to be followed by 3 end-of-the-unit assessments. Again, the narrative, opinion, and informational. And we'll score the writing assessment using rubrics and writing exemplars. That's going to be a huge portion of our PD that we have tomorrow. We're going to dedicate probably about 3.5 hours to that. We're going to be taking a look at, they're going to bring some of the samples of some of the initial assessments that they did. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at exemplars, we're going to look at rubrics, and we're going to start to calibrate tomorrow. Okay, let's see. Okay, SMART Goal 2 is the math, standards-based mathematics. So, and like I said, we talked about making thinking visible. One of the things that we did differently this year is, in the past, I would pull the teachers for half-day analysis, assessment, and planning. This year, we pulled each grade level for a full day. We dedicated half of the time to math and half of the time to literacy. Because we had a focus on SMART Goal 1, we really focused on literacy, but now we know we really need to look at the data, take a better look at that. We're also planning a math night for families. And some of the things that we noticed by looking at the data in math also are the things that we've been talking about. We want to make sure, fractions definitely came up. We noticed that. But we also want to make sure that there's fluency with math, and we need to improve number sense as well. So we took a look at some resources for math centers. So what could that look like? What type of math games can we introduce, and even introduce at home, so students can develop better number sense? And SMART Goal 3, fostering safe and nurturing, respectful learning environment. So just a few things that I wanted to highlight here, and this is brand new this year, we're really excited about it, is the counselors will implement the Second Step program, which teaches social and emotional skills along with violence prevention.
I have to ask, the 23 years I was here as a high school principal, I heard about the Second Step. Are we resurrecting this now? Are we resurrecting this? Because it was a program we had years ago.
Yeah.
Ms. Hood kind of oversaw, Ms. Kathy Hood.
Yeah.
We are bringing this back?
Yeah, this is actually, this is a newer revised.
Who's teaching it?
Our counselors. Yeah. They're going to do more of a push-in. So really what it does is it builds social and academic success. It focuses on empathy, emotion management, and problem-solving
I
skills.
just remember way back when I was here.
Yeah.
There was pushback from the elementary teachers. They didn't have the time to give up to have a Second Step program implemented.
Right. So what we're doing is Betsy and Trey, we've set up their schedule where one is on call during the day while the other goes into the classroom. So what we're doing this year is we're piloting it where they're going into first grade only. Next year we're going to expand it to second grade. But there's about 17 lessons, but they are going to go into the classrooms. They've already scheduled that and organized it.
When I was here, the teachers did not want to give up that time.
Yeah. Well, and here's the other thing.
I mean that in a positive way. They needed that time.
Yeah. Well, and also now we're not expecting them that this is just one more thing that they have to teach, but this way the counselors are going to go in. But it's important. It's really important. Also, Principals Advisory Committee, and this is new, there's 8 members on our Principals Advisory Committee. We have a paraeducator, we have a specialist teachers, 3 teachers, our secretary, and Renee and I, and we're meeting 10 times throughout the year, and one of the big things that we're focusing on is our vision, mission statement, and core beliefs. And we also have a spirit team as well. So, to our key measurement. Okay, so the things that we want to focus on with end of the year grade 2 will improve their academic performance on STAR reading by 5%, reaching 87% proficiency and above by the end of the 2014-2015 school year. We want to see all students will show growth on the common on-demand writing assessment in narrative, opinion, and informational. Like I said before, this year we're going to establish baseline data so that we can set target goals for next year. Also, all students will show growth on the common math assessments, establish baseline data this year. Grade 2 will improve their academic performance on STAR math by 5%, reaching 85% proficiency and above by the end of the 2014-2015 school year. And then also, we're looking for staff and parent surveys to elicit feedback and foster shared leadership. And finally, the revision of the Meadowbrook vision and vision statements with the addition of core beliefs will be completed the 2014-2015 school year with input from Principals Advisory Committee, Student Council, and Meadowbrook staff.
Sounds like there's a lot of professional development this day tomorrow.
Yeah.
Did anyone have any questions for Mrs. Davis?
Well done.
Very well done. Thank you.
Very nice.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Glad we fixed our computer.
Thanks for Ryan.
Great.
It's a kismet that he was driving by.
Oh, that is it.
That's pretty funny.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank you. Good luck tomorrow.
Got to get the coffee
I was just going to say, it sounds like you need a lot of coffee.
and the treats. If they have coffee, they're okay. They need coffee.
Where's my keys?
They did. They gradually revamped the MCAS.
Right.
Because remember, we adopted Common Core in 2011. So as we did that, Michael was saying, you had gradual change, 15%, and then last year, a full change.
Well, I hope the focus on math really does help improve
Oh, yeah.
the grades that we've been seeing, so.
Definitely important.
Yep. So I just want, do we want to take a, should we make a motion to
No, that's great.
accept this?
Oh,
No.
yeah, I thought you were gonna take a break.
So if someone to accept our SMART goals, or what was
Yeah,
presented
move
tonight?
to approve the East Long Meadow Public School district and individual school SMART goals.
I'll second it.
Okay, motion's made and seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, nay. That carries forward 5-0. Anybody want to call for a 5-minute recess? Or do you want
No,
to
we
just
can get this done.
continue?
Yeah,
Let's keep moving.
Okay, as long as you all agree. Wasn't sure at the
Yeah.
beginning what we were going to do.
Okay.
All right, so we're moving on to old business 6.1, capital plan for fiscal year 16.
Okay, in your packets, you have a spreadsheet that shows the projects outlined over the 5 years. I think you saw this last meeting and started to discuss it. It's right now divided up by schools and not prioritized for the district as a whole, which should be fine for the submission this week to capital planning. Basically, they are focusing on FY16, so it's that first column on the left there. Right now, given some of the larger projects that are in there, such as the high school electrical service upgrade, which is $2.3 million, things like the Meadowbrook exterior, exterior renovation, which is 1.7. You have a pretty high total at the bottom of that FY16. So eventually, they are going to, capital ask you to prioritize these. In your packet, you did have the priority list from last year.
Yeah, I saw we did that in January, so we have a month or two to kind
Yeah,
of
we've
move
Right.
got
back
time.
on this.
Right. Just so you know, the chiller system is being taken care of. That was approved.
Right.
The hot water project was number 2 and was not approved at town meeting. I'm not sure it was recommended as one capital project.
It wasn't recommended.
Right.
So that's still on our list. The drive-it was picked up.
Right.
So those are 2 projects that have been already approved and are being moved on. And you also had the electrical upgrade at Maple Shade, which, at Meadowbrook.
Meadowbrook,
Thank you,
that was
Rosie.
2 years ago, right?
Well,
This
it was
is past
approved 2
summer.
years ago.
Yeah. Right.
They just did
The
it.
work
Done.
was finished this year.
Yeah, they just did it.
Yeah.
Now, I just have a question, because I know the last time we discussed this at our meeting, number 4, the Meadowbrook exterior renovation, what did that include? Was it new windows?
It includes all new windows, and I believe doors as well in there. The windows at Meadowbrook are the original windows.
Right.
And so they're not energy efficient. They're obviously as old as the building. And so this is one way that the architects, in isolating that project, would get at starting to renovate and becoming a more energy efficient building.
Gordon, we talked about, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, there's one item that was not on your spreadsheet the last time, and that's item number 26, the high school replacement of hot water tanks. That's something that just came to our attention this past week. Does everybody see that? That's actually going to be a little bit higher than 20,886. It's probably going to be closer to 25,000. Bruce Fenney, in one of his regular maintenance checks, realized we have a hot water tank, I believe, in each boiler room at the high school, roughly 350 gallon. And they're starting to get to the point where they may be leaking. He feels he can patch it and keep us going for the year. He'd prefer not to spend another 25,000 out of the maintenance budget, because that pretty much would use our entire maintenance budget in the month of November and December. And so we'd like to keep it going, patch it, and then put it on as a capital project that hopefully gets elevated into our top 2 so that he can do it this summer.
How old are those water tanks?
They are, I believe, 2004, I want to say. I can get that information.
No, I'm just curious, because at Birchland,
G-
didn't we just have a
We did.
water tank issue
Right,
there too?
yeah.
So it's like,
And that one
they
he
all
did
kind of
take care
replaced at
of.
the same time?
He took care of the Birchland one out of the maintenance budget because it actually happened in the late summer.
Right, so we had the money.
And so we used it, but he also notified appropriations as well as the school committee that down the road, if we got into a situation with maintenance where we might need a reserve fund transfer, it would be because of the significant expenditure in August that we did with the Birchland Park hot water tanks.
Now, could you replace one of those even with one of those more instant water type of things? You don't have that tank sitting around? I mean, maybe you can't for
I think they would.
both, but
I think they would do it
things
similar to what they
change.
did at Birchland.
Yeah.
Is they would bring in.
two smaller
Two smaller ones.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As long as Bruce feels he can patch it and keep it going.
Well, you don't have a 700 one here, where they
Yeah.
actually had to cut it up to get it out of the room at Birchland.
Well, yeah.
You
I
have
think-
350 one here.
I think it's more work to retrofit one of,
One of those.
as opposed to when you
Yeah.
build new and put one in, as opposed to replacing an existing water tank.
All right.
As
At
long
least
as-
like if you break it down, smaller units, like we did it.
Yeah.
If one goes out, at
Right,
least
you
you
have
have
a
the other
backup.
ones for a backup. Okay.
Right.
As long as Bruce is comfortable that he can patch it and keep it out of our maintenance budget, yeah, this is the way to go.
That's what he was thinking
Okay.
as of
Right.
last week.
All right.
Well, but is it a maintenance issue, though? I mean, the problem with putting it as a capital project, and then it bumps something else of our capital
Right.
investment project.
Right.
So
But I mean,
what's our maintenance budget for the high school on an annual basis?
Well, it's not just set aside for the high school, it's actually
District-wide.
district, and I want to say
Well-
it's about,
The way it's split up, and we should probably talk about this year too,
Mm-hmm.
because it ends up being an issue. It's originally about $160,000 that we
it's
spent.
about 80,000 on either side.
Right, well, 80,000 for contracted services and
Alright.
80,000 for supplies, but some years, we really use more in the contracted services than
Right.
supplies, and towns can't
Contracted
transfer
services
as
would be
easily.
things such as you bring in elevator specialists to make sure that all our elevators are inspected, and it's that kind of thing. We're spending more on that side, so actually in budget development, it would be good, instead of just splitting it in half, to put more on the contracted services side. Generally, we come out of August and September, and our
Yeah.
contracted services side is well expended at that point.
Is that specific to schools or all buildings in
No,
town?
no, those are
No,
just for
just
schools.
schools. Just schools.
Those are.
But the $120,000 or $160,000?
Just
is
schools.
Just schools?
Just
Right.
schools. That's what had come out of our budget at one time and gone into the
But it's on
DPW budget.
town side, so they don't have the ability to transfer as we.
Right,
Right,
right.
so once it's
So-
on one side for
Right.
contracted services, you can't move it to the,
Right, right.
say, maintenance side or vice versa.
So I think that DPW, if we talk with them, maybe can budget for it differently so
Right.
that we can use it differently. 'Cause now we're just.
But they would have to be part of their operating budget.
Right.
Approved at
They would have to
Right.
go, yeah, they would have to develop their budget a little bit differently for
Right.
next year.
But potentially, it may be in there, that's $20,000, I mean, it's 9, or 11, 12% of the whole thing. Maintenance budget-wise, I don't know.
Well, we usually do a pretty good job of spending the majority of that, and usually come around November or December, we're on hold for a little
Yeah,
while.
sure, no, I-
Until we make sure that we
Hopefully,
make it
hope
through
to
the
reach
year.
January
Right.
before we
Yeah.
go.
I just, in terms of strategically planning on capital projects, to add another $20,000 project, which is really a maintenance issue more than any, well, I guess they're all maintenance
Right.
issues.
they're all,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
I don't know.
But if it's over 20,000, it really is a capital project.
Right,
so.
yeah.
Right.
But this just meets that threshold, maybe. But the
Yeah,
other-
he said it's probably going to be, the quote he gave me today was, for the two tanks, was $19,970, and then labor and piping to those tanks would take us probably closer to $25,000.
Right.
Right.
So,
Could they get broken up over 2 years or they're just not?
if he's going to go do it, he would like to replace both. They're both the same age.
I'm just saying, so it goes over 2 maintenance cycles, dollar-wise. But
I
then
don't
you're
know
gonna
that-
pay
yeah.
more for them to come back.
No,
I know.
right.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, I mean, you
it.
know what,
Might be
make the
the
mess,
labor.
make the mess once.
Yeah.
Yeah, might be the labor. All right,
But
so.
I think we should revisit that though, as we did with Birchland. If the maintenance budget allows for it, and if we could plan for it, then that would help us in terms of capital projects. We have projects we all know that we continue to put off year after year.
Right.
If we have maintenance money that we can somehow steer in that direction, that just, by making it number
Sure.
2 on our list, that bumps off number 3 probably, whatever, and
Right.
so, I'm just thinking strategically, if there's money in that fund.
So
Maybe
one of the
we
things
try
you
to
could do,
not put it on this list.
to Mr. Fitzgerald's point, is you're not really prioritizing these probably until January. So if you leave it on here, at least so that it's got a placeholder, we can see where we are with that maintenance budget as we go through the months.
I would suggest we not leave it on there, and perhaps we get, as the strategy was with Birchland, it was, if the money was there out of the
It was there because it was August.
Well, but we're gonna potentially patch these through until next year anyway, so potentially we could wait till August. If the money's there in August, then we use the money out of the, he knows the funds better than I do.
But
I'm just
the
saying, why not
difference-
do it the same way?
The difference with Birchland, it was dire because it was already leaking. These are at the point where he feels that they could start leaking, but they have not yet.
You can't roll over any maintenance money from one year to the next?
No.
And when does that cycle end? Like,
June 30th.
June 30th.
it's June
The fiscal
30th.
year, yeah.
Well, we'd like to have your purchase orders in well before June
Yeah.
30th, but yeah.
No, I'm just thinking like if they started the project, say for instance,
You
June
can't roll it.
20th, and they completed it in July.
If they've
Can we
purchased
use
everything,
both?
if they've
I'm
purchased
playing here,
everything,
you know,
yeah.
can we use
I mean,
both years?
No, you can't.
You
No.
can't.
You can't.
Supplies.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to purchase with fiscal year,
This year.
what would it be, 15, thank you.
Okay.
At least the tanks.
Right.
Whether he does the labor in July, that's another thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just, if we could think of some way to not have it on capital.
Right, I think maybe, could we talk to Bruce about that again? And
Sure.
see how feasible it would be to treat it as we did Birchland,
Okay.
in terms of that sort of strategy. I'm just saying that it's gonna knock off another project. We have
I know.
34 projects, and we do, how many did we do last year? 4, 5?
Two.
2. Yeah, see, that's what.
And buses.
But the only thing is, he has to put this information in tomorrow.
Right.
Yeah,
But
I
we
mean,
also- but it's
if
not
you vote to take it out,
prioritized,
so-
then I don't put it as an individual project tomorrow. I mean, we can ask Bruce.
I think we take it out, and we can always add it in there, though, but I think having it in there now.
Well, I
and
mean,
and I have other-
you can subtract it at any time, but if I don't submit it this week, I don't know that you can add it.
in.
Yeah.
So,
It would be
At
easier,
least that's what the instructions
yeah.
were.
it'd be easier to move it out later, I
Right.
think.
Yeah,
So the other
so-
question I have, though, is, and we talked about it briefly last meeting, is the high school project specifically, and they're pushing $3 million
Mhm.
collectively. What is our answer to the question, well, you're asking for a new building and potentially building a new building,
Right.
why would we spend $2.3 million on an electrical service upgrade now?
You might not. We won't know whether we're going to be invited into the process, which is only step one of the process, probably until January.
Right.
So what we did last year was we actually kept it on here, but we removed it as one, I don't even think it made our
You make a priority.
list.
Didn't make the priority list.
That's
Given
because we
that
dropped
we,
it, though.
what's that?
If it didn't make the priority list, it was because we dropped it from our capital plan.
Well, we kept it on here.
Kept-
I actually
Yeah,
submitted.
five-year plan.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I submitted it as an individual project request at this time. And then, when we discussed it, we discussed with them that we would take the high school projects off the
Right.
priority list.
Right.
Because we were hoping that we would get picked up.
Well, it's important to keep it on the list, because people have to know
see
how
it
dire our high school
Right.
is.
And that's why we kept it
on the
on.
list, I mean.
The
Let them know what you're looking
challenge,
at.
and they did walk with us, so
Yeah.
they got a better idea of what the head room looks like, literally what we're unplugging to actually plug in other things, such as air conditioners for students who
Right.
might need a climate-controlled room.
And I wholeheartedly am on board, and I know the
Right.
need for that,
Right.
but my question is, do we want to submit a capital request that actually reflects what we think we should request this year? And is it fiscally responsible to request almost $3 million in projects, knowing that we will not know whether we're not in the pipeline or not. Because we're not gonna know in time for town meeting. Well, we might know in time for town meeting if we're in the pipeline. But say we're in the pipeline, doesn't mean we're gonna get a building, right? So we're 2 years out before we even know if we're gonna go forward with a building project.
Right.
Right.
Can the electrical upgrade wait 2 years, and thus should it be on the 2018 list instead of this year's list?
Can it wait? Yeah, anything can be pushed off. The challenge here is that every year as you start the year, or even as you're going through the year, you're one step away from shorting out something because you've added too much to a given area.
Yeah, and I fully agree with that.
Right.
But I'm saying, if we are going to capital and saying, this is what we think we should do this year, the only reason we would do that or request that, in my eyes, is if we knew we weren't going to be accepted in the pipeline this year.
Right.
And even if that was the case, we would probably go back to MSBA next year, right? So,
Yeah.
I guess the point is, when do we start spending money on this building? What's the threshold we meet to start spending money on this building? And is it this year that we say we are requesting $2.3 million in an electrical upgrade? Are we requesting that this year?
I would say, to your point, no. You probably are not going to prioritize it in this list. However, I think it's important that the capital planning committee realizes that it's not something that we can ignore, and it may be something that at some point shuts down the high school, and then you're going to need an emergency fund transfer. So that was the reasoning for keeping it on there last year. It was, we actually took, if you remember, I took the price and I put it in this column so it wouldn't total here. And so it's just, it's a discussion item because people in town need to know this.
I agree.
Because, well, other than Bruce, who's very anxious about it, I know our electrical inspector is also anxious about it. And so it's just making sure everybody realizes that we understand, you know, the electrical upgrade is not something you can take to the new building. You can take furniture with you to the new building, and so that might be something that you invest in through a capital project. However, we also want people to understand that this is a dire need, so if something were to happen, we may be coming for an emergency fund transfer, or reserve fund transfer, sorry. I think that was the reasoning.
Yeah, no, I get it. I just don't, the likeliness of us getting $5.6 million is.
Right, absolutely.
Not.
Yeah,
So-
no. You're
I don't
absolutely
know.
right there.
I know there's a need, we have 34 projects and they're all valid projects.
We can
so.
move that on another day, just so long as it's there
Yeah.
for now.
I mean,
But we can move
one
it.
of the biggest items that I think Mrs. Olajar spoke to last time was, we're now up to 5 buses that are over 10 years, and, you know, we don't have to pass them around now, but just so you know, to give you an idea, it's not the engine that goes on these things when they're in service, it's actually the rust. And so it's the interior, it's the actual aisle, it's the stairs, and that's because of the wet, the salt, the snow, and all the things that enter into our buses. And so it's actually the shell of the bus that starts to break down. And so these buses, some of them, even though we move them into more of the reserve role, so they might do athletic trips or something else, they might not do the everyday home to school, school to home runs, but we're getting fewer and fewer that we can actually move to the reserve because you need roughly, what, 18 buses going for home to school.
So that could be high enough priority, that's what they're saying.
Right,
Right.
that could be a high one.
I mean, I think at some point, it might not be harmful to ask Capital to go tour the bus yard and actually look at
Right.
the physical condition of the buses. Now, they have always talked about maintenance. Now I think it's time to talk about safety.
Right.
Right.
Now we move from, and I get their maintenance, okay. If you keep up your maintenance, you can keep the buses running, and we've done that. Now we're getting into a situation where we need to start thinking about seriously renewing our fleet, because safety is an issue. And I
Right, well,
think,
some won't pass inspection.
Right.
You know, if, say, a stairwell continues to rust and, you know, a hole is created, it's not gonna pass inspection. We might be able to patch it. In some cases, we have. There are pictures in here, we've patched some.
I mean,
But
at this
eventually,
point,
you're not going to be able to
We're talking
patch
about
it.
students at this point, which really, I understand that money's tight. But it's not like you have a car and you got 250,000 miles on it, you want to get another year out of that car because it's going to make you happy on the inside and you don't care if the floor's rotted out. We have students and they're coming on it. Could you imagine if, the bolts came loose on the seats because there's underlying rust that we don't even see from the underside of the vehicle? I mean, it is something where you know.
Right.
Well,
They
that's
are
why-
going to have to say uncle at some point.
That's why I said, let's bring a couple of them over to the bus yard and
Yep,
just show
that's a
them
good
where
idea, yeah.
where,
Actually,
you know,
Capital's been more than willing.
Right.
They've
Yeah,
toured
we've
our
done the
buildings,
schools, right.
so I'm sure they will be willing to go over to the bus yard.
Yeah, I mean, and before the weather gets bad, and just say, hey, this is gonna be on our list, here's what
Right.
here's why.
Right. And it does kind of go back to with the accreditation, and I know that the buses aren't just the high school, but there's only, as they spoke with us, they were concerned about how we are one of the districts that spends the least per student, dollar-wise, in the area, and it just turns back to, yes, and at some point, they said you are gonna need to start putting money into
Right.
the
They didn't even say at some
infrastructure
point,
and-
they said
As
now.
of now,
They said
yes,
now.
now. But it is, it's something that, so I'm happy they're at least willing to come and look.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's important that, it's one pool of money, it's gonna get divided up, but, they need to realize where we're coming from when we keep this on our capital plan. And it's obvious, at least in my mind, that it moves up on the priority list because of what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing now. So, going forward.
So what is our action tonight?
Tonight, you can certainly amend this in any way. What ultimately you would want to vote on to approve is some 5-year plan, and then the fiscal year 16 projects are the ones that I need to enter into. You can move some out, just as Mr. Thompson was speaking to a moment ago. You can amend this in any way you want. Ultimately, whatever is approved, I will take the fiscal year 16 projects, and an individual project request form has to go to capital
And when does that due?
this week. So between tomorrow and
Okay.
Wednesday morning.
At some point, and this is a conversation for another day, but we really need to, and I know we all know this at this table, figure out how we're going to maintain these buildings in the long term, because if there's electrical upgrades on this, I'm looking a year or two out, that are in the $3 million range for
Right.
Mountain View electrical upgrade. And if we're only spending $1 million total
Yeah, we're never
capital
gonna get
improvements, we're
there.
not gonna get there, and they only continue to get older. So,
Right.
at some point, we have to figure out a strategy, as a town, I speak as collectively,
Right.
and to your point, Beth, that we have to figure out how to maintain these buildings,
Right.
because they're all aging. So, I don't know, I don't have the answer for that.
I mean,
Right.
unfortunately,
Right.
in the past couple of years, they haven't spent a whole lot on capital projects. There's been a lot of bonding that's been done previously, and
Right.
they didn't, I understand about the bond rating and all that other stuff. But I agree with Greg's point, and I agree with Beth, at some point, we need to really take a look town-wide at how we're gonna do it, and is it create a cycle, I don't know what the answer is, but yeah.
I think that upgrade might be an error. I gotta check that. Thanks for
one's that?
pointing it out. The
Oh,
one
the
in
$3
FY7.
million.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
high for an electrical
No,
upgrade.
Yeah.
So I will double check that. Luckily, it's in FY17, so, but thank you for bringing it to my attention.
Yeah, because even the fire suppression, or is that 317?
That's 317,000, so I think that's a repeat, but adding a place there.
Yeah.
All right,
So I'll have to find that. Those numbers came from the facility study, so
Oh, yeah.
I will
Okay.
find that and update that.
Yeah, and it's gonna be a challenge to prioritize these that we're submitting even for this year, because
Right.
they
We
all-
need them
They're all
all. We
important.
need them all.
Right.
They're
at
all
some
important.
point.
We need them all.
Well, I'm gonna make a motion to approve the summary of the 5-year capital plan in front of us.
I'll
Okay.
second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any further discussion?
Do you just want to specify specifically
Oh, the
FY16, and then just with clarification allowed for the Mountain View number of the electrical upgrade? Because if that number changes, we won't need to approve it, but
Okay.
we're gonna assume that changes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it will change. I don't think it's
It
$3
should go
million.
down.
So do you want to revise your motion to specify that it's for fiscal year 16, and also,
including the summary.
Including the summary.
Right, include the summary.
FY16, and the
With any
potential for a
revision to-
change for the Mount
Mountain View
View
electrical
electrical
upgrade.
upgrade number. Kathy?
Okay,
Yeah.
we got that?
Okay.
And motion made, and then Bill, you're going
I'll
to
second,
second it
yep.
again, or any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Hearing none, that carries forward 5-0. Great, thank you.
Thank you.
High school robotics going to a few places.
Yeah, high school robotics, similar to years past, going to a number of trips in the New England area. The first one on November 8th, that has been canceled, so they're not going on that trip. So their first one will be now November 15th, going to Windsor, South Windsor, Connecticut. Most of these are on Saturdays. They have raised a good amount of funds, roughly $5,000 from last year. They have a group of chaperones and their parents that not only help get them there, but also chaperone the trips. And you have a letter from Dr. Flanagan and then from Mr. Van Buren.
You know, once again, I mean, maybe because I'm tired, but last year, we did not allow the last one without more information. It puts it back on again.
Right.
I'm not going to approve the last one. They're
No.
going away for 4 days.
I agree
Is
with
it during
that.
vacation time? I don't know.
That's over
I mean,
April
we don't
vacation,
know
yeah.
any details, chaperone. I mean, I know that he's saying there's 24 kids, and he gives it the formula for chaperones, but how much it's going to cost each student, we don't have any information like that.
Okay.
So I'm happy to approve November 15th through April 4th. I'm just one person. I'm not going to approve April 15th to April 18th with just a blanket one-line statement.
I agree with
We
that.
sent it back last year
Yeah,
with
we
the
did.
same comment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll do
So,
that.
yeah.
So I,
Yeah, do it.
Do it
so I
again.
move that we accept the Saturday, they're all Saturdays, robotics field trips from November 8th, 15th.
No, it's canceled.
Oh, I'm sorry, November 15th, December 6th, December 13th, January 17th, and April 4th. And we will ask for more information on the April 15th through 18th championship.
Okay, motion's
Okay.
made,
Second.
seconded by Greg. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Carries forward 5-0. And then we have our last thing to look at, which is a high school music department field trip, which sounds like a really nice trip.
This is a trip that they have
They do that every year.
Right.
And so it's a trip to New York with the music department. It gives you not only a breakdown of the different standards that they're covering, but also a little bit of their itinerary. Ticket price on the second page, as well as the times that they are going to be there and when they plan to return.
So I'll move that we approve the music department field trip to New York City on Wednesday, April 8th, 2015. Yeah.
Yep, motion made
I'll second.
and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Hearing none, that carries forward 5-0. And with that, we have reached the end of our meeting. I want to appreciate everyone for staying awake this whole time.
Yeah.
I know it's tough for us.
Mackie, are you awake?
Yeah. I just need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion made
Second.
and seconded by Beth. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay.
No.
Exactly, and that's going to carry
You can
forward
stay.
still 5-0. That's right.
Yeah.
And with that, thanks very much. Have a great night.
It's done.
Thank you.